We'd like to call the meeting to order. If you can, are able, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll remain for a moment of silence. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and people have 3 minutes. And you can also speak on each agenda item as well. If you would just give your name and if you're a township resident when you give any public comments. Are there any public comments?
Alicia Dyer, Ypsilanti Township. Keon Washington, age 17. Alicia Tomlin, age 23. Keandre Duff, age 20. Darius James, age 25. Alan Sheverovich, age 25. DeAndre Willingham, age 20. Andre Smith, age 22. Dylan Hemphill, age 18. Zachary Curry, age 18. Brian Matthews, age 21. Sonny Green, age 20. Antonio Bishop, age 20. Arthur Ellison, age 18. Vaughn Craddock, age 22. Donald Hall, age 19. Jamar Gardner, age 31. Derek Allen, age 29. Chris Marsh, age 18. Kenneth Jackson, age 17. Chris King, age 20. Marquise Gillespie, age 16. Anna List, age 17. Reed Carter, age 22. Zaire Wilson, age 21. Garland Johnson, age 23. Arshawn Evans, age 17. Laurente Phillips, age 18. This is a list of some and not even all of the young people that have been killed due to gun violence in recent years in our community or our neighboring communities. I personally knew some of the young people on this list, whether from growing up here or working in the community or responding to homicide calls. Our gun culture is killing our young people. Most of the guns young people end up getting access to or getting their hands on originally started out as a legal purchase from a gun buyer that went to a gun store. This isn't the movies, and people are not building guns in their basement. We do not need an increase in gun sales or another gun store at a time when gun violence locally and nationally has increased as much as it has. I want to know what the plan will be to account for the unintended consequences that will be associated with this development. Growing up, what used to be a standard fight at the bus stop, when guns are present, these fights are turning into funerals. When we have another homicide of one of our young people in our community and that gun is traced to being originally bought at Range USA in Ypsilanti Township, we will remember this. And not to mention the suicide and domestic violence incidents involving guns. I can only pray and hope that you all vote no tonight. I argue that you can do this at this time because this is the final approval phase and the process was dishonest from the start, which was explained in a detailed policy brief that has been shared with you all. You were all not given the necessary information, and the public was denied necessary information in the beginning at the first phase when this first went to Planning Commission. I really believe the Planning Commission and you all as board members were not afforded the whole truth about this development, and this moved too far too fast. I personally spoke with people that work at one of the nearby hotels, which is across the street, and they're not enthused. This idea that you won't hear anything coming from the gun store and shooting range in the area is not true. Additionally, despite all of the state-of-the-art surveillance that they claim to have, shootings and break-ins inside their gun store chain locations have happened. I want to thank the board for sending them our policy brief, and I would love to listen to what their response is because we deserve answers. Vote no on this gun store development. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Good evening. My name is Leonore Gerstein. I'm a resident of Washtenaw County, but not of Ypsilanti itself. I'm expressing concern as a neighbor of Ypsilanti and concern for all the people who live here and the ramifications of having a gun shop and shooting range go far beyond your own precincts, the town precinct. People are mobile. People have cars. People move around all the time from age 16 on up. I beg you to weigh the benefits for the community versus the risks for the community, not for the business that wants to establish itself here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Leah Mills, 1975 MacArthur. Oh, I'm about to say MacArthur. Oh my goodness, it took me back to Ypsilanti Township. Mary Catherine Street. So I'm here again to appeal in this gun range, gun store situation, to appeal to the morals that you all hold, to appeal to the heart that you have. Last meeting, we heard from the attorney that made mention about the drugs that we have in certain areas of the township. And when we look at that through a lens of impaired judgment, and we put that alongside having a possible gun in your possession, then we're looking at, in total, something that could become very catastrophic. I'm very much concerned, as Alicia Dyer made mention, some of those young people that she spoke about and called out their names are young people that I worked with in therapy, right? They were young people that were unable to live out their dreams. They were young people that potentially could have had a seat here at the table years later. And yet, we have an opportunity to shut down some of this behavior. But instead, we're looking at zoning laws, and we're looking at what we feel that we cannot do instead of looking at what we should do. And what we should do is keep humanity in mind, right? These are someone's loved one, someone's baby. We've gone to funerals together, looking at a lifeless child due to the fact that they were gunned down. And for what? And so if we have these other entities that's going on within our community, such as substance use that is not being treated, then why not put a pause on this? Because we don't want to double up on the problem that we already have. If we're suffering, why add to the suffering? To me, that makes no sense. From a humanitarian standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense. And so I appeal to you, knowing that you all have the right to be able to vote and vote this thing down, to give our children the opportunity, to give our elders the opportunity to live out their last days absent fear, absent imposed trauma, absent the opportunity of guns getting into the hands of those that it should not be in, causing more devastation. And again, I appeal to you this evening, please vote no. Please think about your constituents and the fact that when we have to lay our head, and I understand, right? Society is not as calm and tranquil as we would love for it to be. I understand that we have concerns with gun violence already. Let's not add to it. Let's not add to it. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Holman. I live at 1248 Rambling Road, Ypsilanti Township. I want to thank Leah for what she said, that beautiful appeal to humanity. I just want to also mention that I also work in mental health, and it's not just murder, but we also have to work with people who are maimed and traumatized by gun violence. And as you all probably know, the rate of suicide among young males has really gone up a lot during COVID. And suicide, not always, but it can be prevented. It can be intervened. I spend, my work days trying to keep people off the edge, right? But it's pretty hard to come back. Hard to change your mind after, a shot to the head. I just wanted to add that. But I also just want to make a couple brief statements. In October 2017, Scientific American reported that according to numerous studies, most studies, the more guns there are in a community, the more violent crime. And then also about suicide. Again, the Harvard School of Public Health reports that every study that has examined the issue has found that within the U.S., access to firearms is associated with increased suicide risk. And it makes no sense to me that the township is courting a business that will increase this violence. And I wonder if maybe interests other than community well-being are more persuasive to our leadership than research or the voice of concerned citizens. I hope not. This should be obvious. I just want to say that attending a vendor's advertising pitch is not the same as due diligence. These and other issues make me wonder if there needs to be a change in leadership to more responsive and responsible representation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have a lot. My name is Ralph Johnson. I live at 1248 Rambling Road in Ypsilanti Township. I don't have a lot to add except my voice. I think what people have said has been very eloquent, and you have the reports in your hands. There are studies. There's really doesn't seem like there's a lot of question in terms of what is good for the community versus what is good for this business. And I think you are here, you are elected to take care of the community, to do what's right for us. And I don't see bringing in more guns into the community in this day and age when almost every day we open the paper and we read about gun violence, more gun violence, mass shootings, multiple times a day. The last thing we need is to encourage that by bringing a gun store into the community. There's enough, and I think people have said it better than I can. So I just wanted to put my voice out there and also plead with you to please vote no and support our community. Thank you.
Tanya Dixon. I live in Ypsilanti Township. I am a retired teacher from Lincoln Schools, 33 years. I recognize those names, many of them, most recently Lorante. It is heartbreaking to hear the number of children that we are losing and young people that we are losing to gun violence. In my family, we lost my son-in-law in December to gun violence. These are not just names, these are people with lives and families. I don't understand how we could be here in this community considering this as a business that we would court, that we would support, that we would bring here. Why would we give greater access when we already know the devastating impact that this has on our young people? We need to live our values. You need to live our values. Our community values safety and peace and the well-being of our young people. This is not okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Arloa Kaiser. I live at 1421 Melvin Street, and I have grown up around guns my whole life, and a lot of this starts at home. Parents, every parent in here, hopefully has said to their kids, guns aren't toys. We always had guns in the house. They were not loaded. We didn't play with them. When we got of age that we could, we were taught how to shoot them properly. A lot of this, as far as, and it's my opinion, is that parents aren't paying enough attention to their kids, what the kids are doing. The kids have cars, younger ages, they're out playing around, some of them with drugs, some of them not. And I know you're waving your head no, but you
Ms.
should
Kaiser,
see a
just
lot of this.
Address the comments to the
Yes,
board.
ma'am, excuse me. And everybody wants to blame everything on somebody else. They're blaming this on this gun store. I don't know how many years, if they still do it, Walmart sold guns, bullets. And did anybody complain about that? A shooting range is showing a person how to properly shoot a gun. Taught that you don't have a loaded gun. You can have, what is it, a CPL, I believe, a concealed weapons license that you can get legally. You have to pay attention to these kids. And that's where a lot of this fault is. The parents aren't, it's blame it on somebody else. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Trisha Duckworth. I am a Ypsilanti Township resident. So let's just start there. I'm not going to say my address, though, publicly, because I don't want y'all riding past my house. Now, I'm going to be honest, like, you know, I had all this stuff that I was going to say, but your minds are already made up. They always are. You always seem to do what you want to do. Now, for me, what that looks like is new leadership. Because if the people who we put in these seats are not going to do what we need them to do, then they got to go. But what happens is the community doesn't always understand that because we're so polite and we want to do the right thing and we want to be nice. We are past being nice. We are past times where our legislators are not doing what we need them to do. Do we need this gun store with other gun stores in the area? No, we do not. So I don't understand what you're doing, bringing this here, when what you should be doing is trying to engage the community, especially around those ARPA dollars that you have. How can you sit there with millions of dollars at your fingertips, knowing that you could bless the community, bless grassroots organizations, help empower these children, help empower Black-owned businesses, but the first thing that you think about doing, and this isn't an ARPA funds, but I'm just saying, on your agenda is a gun store. It makes absolutely no sense. On your agenda is license plate readers. It makes absolutely no, all of these things that you say, oh, it's going to make the community safer. No, it's not going to make the community safer. Let's be honest. When it comes to research, anybody can find research to support something on either side. But it is not about research. It is about what the community is saying and what the community wants. You all need to start listening. You need to start listening, and you need to start executing what the community needs. Brenda Stumbo, with all due respect, you don't have our best interests at heart. Low opportunity index is not a talking point, ma'am. And you are going all around the county, oh, low opportunity index this and low opportunity index that. But yet you sit with millions of dollars at your fingertips and you do nothing. So for me, new leadership is what we need because clearly you do not have the best interests of the community at heart. And that is absolutely sickening.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Letitia Sharp, and I am your new leadership. All right. I have filed an affidavit, and I am an official candidate for the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners for District 5. District 5 represents Ypsilanti Township and Augusta Township, and or I said majority of Ypsilanti Township. And Alicia, the names that you mentioned, I knew a lot of those young folks. I knew their parents. And I knew their grandparents. And it's sad that at a board meeting, we can talk about, we have people coming out to talk someone out of gun violence, but I don't see programming, support for young people. Is that anywhere on the agenda? So this is what we need. We need to make sure that whatever we do it in the best interest of the community. We do it with the community's involvement. Again, my name is Letitia Sharp, and I am the next county commissioner for District 5, but I can't do it without your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time? And you can speak on it again when it's on the agenda as well.
I know I've handed out a few of these to you guys so far this evening. This here
Would you
is-
speak into the
oh,
microphone, please?
Sorry,
I'm
sorry.
The person doing the minutes, they are not in the meeting.
My name is Kristen Howard. I am Ypsilanti Township Precinct 15 delegate. I am here to represent those that live in my precinct, including this gun store and gun alley that they're talking about putting in. It's not a gun range. I was actually talking to Alicia about this earlier. It's not a gun range. It is similar to like a bowling alley. They actually have a huge comparison online describing the difference between a range and an alley. I'm going to avoid going into all those details. But there are so many other locations within a 30-minute drive that individuals can go and shoot. There are numerous places for guns to be purchased. I did a poll of individuals in my precinct, asking them what they thought about having a gun store and a place where they can go shoot it in their community. And they're like, really? Why would someone put that here? We have so many kids and there's so many other things and opportunities. Of the 15, 16 people I ended up polling over the last 4 days, one of them said they were excited about it because they like to go shooting. I suggested they go to the shooting range on Ellis Road. There are so many opportunities, and I'm going to avoid going over all the other details that have happened with individuals and shootings. And I realize that you guys have already voted 7-0 once on the first, and I believe it was 5-1 on another one, and they already own the land and things like that. And the idea of potentially ending up in a lawsuit if you guys voted this down. But lawsuit versus lives, something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments at this time?
Hello, my name is Sam Couture. I'm a county resident. As someone who's provided basic firearms safety and training to many of my relatives and friends the last few years, I'm all for bringing this to town. To tell you the truth, I'm kind of sick of driving half-hour away to take anyone to go do anything. I used to live in Florida, and the local sheriffs actually had a range that we could go visit, and it was 15 minutes from my house. And I learned so much from them, and I think just having something close by, having a range that does training, that provides these things that don't make it as intimidating as, say, going to Ann Arbor, where it's a very big facility. They're kind of pretentious. I've been to the Wixom location of this place. They're very nice. It's kind of small, more homely, and I'm all for it. I understand, people have opposition, but I think training and safety are something people need to do. If you're going to be a firearm owner, you really need to focus on that, and I'm all for something like this to come into town. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comment? And again, you can comment when it's on the agenda as well.
My name's Sean Spinner. I am a resident of Ypsilanti Township. I look forward to having a gun range in the township. I'll start with this map. Let's see, Tri-County Sports League, Washtenaw Sport, those are outdoor, not full year round. Westland, half an hour away. Yeah, that's easy to get to. T-Rex only has 8 lanes in there. It's very, very crowded. And if you're like me, it's hard to get to the range during the week. On the weekends, it's super crowded. Ann Arbor Arms, 20 to 25 minutes away. So it'd be nice to have one down the road here. Range USA is going to provide all kinds of training for people. Training in the use of firearm, handling of firearm, maintenance of your firearm, safety with classes. Every gun that's sold there will have to go through a federal instant criminal background check. That's just standard federal procedure. I don't understand why we can't have community outreach programs and a gun range. We can do both of those. And as far as I understand, it wasn't the township courting this business. This business came to the township and wanted to locate here. Just a few stats for you. 2020, 16.6 million guns sold. 3.8 of those million were to brand new first-time gun owners. 2021, 18.5 million guns sold. And I think we can see why after what's gone on the last couple of years, pandemic and a few other things. 5.4 of those were first-time gun owners. I could break down the demographics for you, but we have seen a sharp, dramatic increase in women and minorities becoming first-time gun owners and taking their own safety into their own hands. Now, we can ignore those stats, or we can put a range up the road here where it's easy for people to get to and learn, train how to use them, train on a regular basis, become proficient with them, learn about gun safety, buy a gun safe, keep them locked up and away from people that shouldn't have them. And, bring it in. I'm all for it.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Larisha Thornton. I am an Ypsilanti Township resident. I am completely against the range being in Ypsilanti Township. I hear everyone that said they're for the gun range, and how safe it's going to be. But let's talk about the Crumblies, okay?
Yeah.
They were decent people. They bought their son a gun, a legal gun, from a gun range, a gun store. Look what happened.
Yeah.
Where are they at? But they were good people. So as a parent, and I know some of the names too on the list, and I know some of the parents as well, we shouldn't have to continue to bury our kids because we have irresponsible parents who go buy guns for their kids to shoot up other kids because they can't deal with the responsibility of having kids and doing what's necessary. Yes, you can lock up guns. You can absolutely lock them up. But what about the parents that don't?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that don't because of safety issues. If I live in a bad neighborhood, I don't want to go to my gun safe, unlock my gun when somebody's already broken my house. Now I have to protect my family, and what do? And let's talk about the felons who can't legally get guns, but they still get them every day. I teach at a women's prison, and I have a female there right now who bought guns legally, okay, for somebody that she met. And they end up committing murder with that gun. And now she's in prison. And her out date is 2045. Yeah, 2045. Why? Because we put a gun range and a gun store in a community that doesn't need one. So now we got blood money, right? Yeah, now we got blood money. Because as soon as something happens, everybody's going to be held responsible. Because we're going to let everybody remember it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment? Hearing none, we're going to go on to the consent agenda, which is the minutes of the April 5th work session and regular meeting, statements and checks, and the treasurer's report for March of 2022.
So moved. Support.
Motion Eldridge, support Jim Wilson. Can't call you Jimmy here, Wilson. Are there questions and comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Attorney's report, is there any general legal update?
Madam Chair, I would like to just very briefly get into one area before the agenda tonight. It pertains to a lawsuit that was filed against the township by a committee calling themselves Ypsilanti Township citizens for responsible government. Now, I've been an attorney now for 45 years. I've learned many years ago, I can't stop somebody from filing a lawsuit if they want to file one, whether it has merit or not. People can file a lawsuit. In this particular lawsuit, they filed against the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. They filed against the Charter Township of Ypsilanti and against Heather Jarrell Rowe in her capacity as township clerk. So what was that lawsuit all about? The township adopted amendments to its zoning ordinance in regards to where recreational marijuana could be located, which is then what was referred to as the IC district, industrial commercial. This group, putting aside for the moment, their language, which deceptively stated that the township had passed an ordinance that would allow recreational marijuana to be sold within 5 feet of a residential homeowner, totally false statement. Putting aside for that for a moment, they were required to gather a number of signatures to go on the ballot. That's the process. Township doesn't create state law, doesn't create federal law. Township follows the law. In this particular case, this group had 30 days to gather 15% of valid signatures of Ypsilanti Township residents who voted in the last gubernatorial election. There were 23,923 persons who voted in the last gubernatorial election. They were required to collect 15% or 3,588 signatures within 30 days. Again, not a township law, state law. So this group went out and hired individuals from 7 different states to come into the township to circulate petitions, making an allegation that I just paraphrased for you. And on day 26, they filed a federal lawsuit claiming that they were not going to have enough time to gather the signatures, and therefore it was a violation of the Constitution. Okay, on the date they filed the lawsuit, they had gathered 4,000 signatures, and by their own admission, only 1,600 were valid. That came from their lawsuit. So they were gathering signatures from people who were not registered, who were not residents of the township, because they were paying 2 separate groups anywhere from $10 to $27 for each signature they obtained. So on Saturday, March 26th, they requested that they turn in their petitions to the township, even though they had until Monday. They wanted to do it on Saturday. Heather Rowe and her staff came to the township on Saturday, accepted their petitions, and they actually turned in 7,895 signatures. So their lawsuit at that point in time was obviously without merit, because they said they couldn't get signatures within 30 days. They turned in 7,895. They had to have 3,588. But I probably can figure out where the story is going to go. When Heather and her staff, Clerk Rowe, with the help of other township departments and township officials, started going through the signatures, only 2,754 were valid. And so, obviously, there were almost 825 signatures short. So rather than the lawsuit being dismissed at that point in time, they've now filed an amendment to the lawsuit claiming that somehow the clerk tricked them into filing the signatures on the Saturday the 26th instead of filing them on Monday, the 28th. The point I'm making in all this, and it may not be of any concern to anybody but people on the township board, but elected officials, when they become an official, they take an oath of office, and they have to uphold the Constitution, the law of the state of Michigan. And the point I'm making right now is that an awful lot of time is expended by public servants and public officials. It's not seen by the general public because they have to do their job irrespective of how frivolous the lawsuit is. Now, at some point in time, will this lawsuit be dismissed? I believe so. Will it have cost the township significant time and resources to respond to it? Yes, it will. And so, as the attorney for the township, on this specific issue anyways right now, it at least should be explained to the board in its entirety of the amount of time and resources that go into defending a lawsuit of this nature, no matter how frivolous it is. And again, I just want to at least, I think the board has already made it quite clear that they recognize and appreciate the efforts of Clerk Rowe and all the staff and all the people in the township that went through all this. But at some point in time, and there'll be other lawsuits that we'll have to defend that are frivolous. I've gone through that for 45 years. And at some point in time, the people have to be held accountable. It's because you have a legal license in this state to file lawsuits. You still need to be held accountable for what you assert as an officer of the court when you file a lawsuit. And so again, it's somewhat frustrating to sit up here for myself and when we go through these lawsuits and talk about different things and expenditures and the resources that come to mind, because a lot of these are not anything the township board has done or not done. It's simply because someone felt that they wanted to spend $100,000 to obtain bogus or invalid signatures. Some of them may be bogus signatures, and basically tie up the township for the last 30 days and trying to respond to a federal judge's request that we advise as to whether or not those signatures meet that threshold. And so I'll stop right there for tonight in regards to the attorney report, but I did want to take a moment to at least update the board because I think some of this has come to you maybe a little bit more disconnected than it sometimes does because of the different people involved in responding on the lawsuit. But I again want to just make that a point of how much time has been expended by the clerk's office in trying to at least validate, or in this case, verify the signatures. And again, it's something not right when you can hire people to come out of state, pay them $25 a signature, and you basically then tie up our staff, and then later on, they want the township to reimburse them $100,000 because they hired people that could not even differentiate between who was a township elector and who was someone living outside the area or someone who was not even a registered voter at all. So again, thanks to Heather for all your hard work and your assistance to our office in responding to this lawsuit.
Questions or comments? When is the next hearing?
There should be a hearing coming up this month, I believe, April. We have a motion to dismiss that's scheduled to be heard, I believe. This so-called amended complaint got filed last night, and we have to respond to that. That's what attorneys have to do. So it'll be sometime this month before we have a further update, I think, in regards to what's going on.
Thank you. Under old business, we have the second reading of Resolution 2022-04, which is a proposed ordinance 2052-49 to amend the Township Fireworks Ordinance. The first reading was held on March 22nd, 2022. Clerk Rowe?
I have Resolution 2022-04, amending the Charter Township Code of Ordinances to amend Section 42-210B entitled Prohibition on Use of Consumer Fireworks. Whereas on February 15, 2022, Ypsilanti Township Supervisor Brenda L. Stembo sent a memorandum addressing to the Charter Township of Ypsilanti Board of Trustees dated February 9, 2022, a copy of which is attached hereto and incorporated by reference, wherein she requested the Township Board to amend the Township's fireworks ordinance so as to allow individuals in the Township to discharge fireworks within the Township on June 19th, also known as the Juneteenth holiday. And whereas Juneteenth is a federal holiday which recognizes and celebrates June 19th, 1866, which is the first day that African Americans in Texas first learned of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was more than 2 years from when it was initially initiated by President Abraham Lincoln. And whereas the Ypsilanti Township Board of Trustees is in agreement with the recommendation of the Ypsilanti Township Board Supervisor Brenda L. Stembo, and that the Township Fireworks Ordinance be amended so as to allow a person to ignite, discharge, or use consumer fireworks within the Township on Juneteenth of each year, commencing on June 19, 2022. And whereas proposed ordinance 2022-04 adds a new section 6 to section 42-210B so as to allow a person in the township to ignite, discharge, or use consumer fireworks within the township on June 19th after 11 a.m. until 1 a.m. on June 20th. Now therefore it be resolved that the Charter Township of Ypsilanti Board of Trustees hereby adopts and incorporates by reference the attached ordinance number 2022-04, which ordinance amends section 42-210B of Charter Township of Ypsilanti's Code of Ordinances entitled Fireworks, so that as a person in the township is to ignite, discharge, or use consumer fireworks within the township on June 19th after 11 a.m. until 1 a.m. on June 20th. I would so move the resolution.
Support Peterson. The motion supports or discussion? I just, previously at the board meeting, there was actually a young man, he was in junior high, who came to the township to me and spoke to me about having a fireworks. And this was actually prior to it becoming a federal holiday on June 19th. Last year, when it became a federal holiday, there were several residents in the neighborhoods that were celebrating with fireworks, but they were very concerned about getting in trouble because it's not on the list of approved holidays for fireworks in Ypsi Township. So this came from the community to amend it and to include that. Historically, Ypsi Township is actually limited the number of fireworks in the community. You could have it every day of the year by state law, and we limited them because there is a lot of concerns, and the noise is, there's a lot of veterans with PTSD as well as animals, and just in general, there was disruption in the neighborhood when they first started with fireworks in the state of Michigan, and they changed the laws that allow the really big ones to go off, whereas before you had to have a license to do that, and now you can just do them in your backyard. So the whole state law changed, but I do appreciate this young man that came forward and asked for the change, as well as the residents who were celebrating. And Sheriff Clayton said he wouldn't enforce it last year against people anyways, because that it was just established as a federal holiday. So this memorializes it, it legalizes it, and puts it on the books as a fireworks day in Ypsi Township for people to celebrate. We did have our first Juneteenth event last year at the township, and a flag raising ceremony, and so I know there's a big celebration also in the city of Ypsilanti. We'll probably be joining them on that or seeing what we can do to coordinate, but that's the history behind the ordinance. Any questions or comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, we have, what? Pardon me. We have to do a roll call because it's an actual ordinance in the township. Wilson?
Yes.
Eldridge?
Yes.
Stumbo votes yes. Rowe?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Swanson?
Yes.
Thank you. Second reading is approved. Under new business number 1, we have the request to approve the Stage 2 final site plan, detailed engineering and development agreement for Range USA located at 660 James L. Hart Parkway. Director Angelino? Ike Angelo.
Good evening, Township Board. Jason Icoangeli, the Township's Planning Director. Before you this evening is a project Range USA to be located at 660 James L. Hart Parkway. And before you this evening is Stage 2 final site plan and detailed engineering approval, as well as the final development agreement for your consideration this evening. I have a PowerPoint that I've briefly went over during the work session, but I'm happy to go through it again, just to kind of talk through the project one last time and answer any questions that you might have about the project from a land use perspective. I do know that the applicant is here this evening as well. If you have any questions about their operations and safety and items like that, I'm sure that they would be better suited than myself to address those types of questions, as that's their business operation. But to go through with you the project, one of the things I would say I heard in the public comments, one of the comments was made a couple of times that the township courted Range USA to come to the township, and that's not true. The township has a zoning map that lays out particular zoning districts which allow certain types of uses, and businesses such as this and other businesses, be it a restaurant use or any other use, they go and they do their homework as far as doing a market analysis as to whether or not their business would be a particularly good fit at a certain location. And then once they've kind of arrived at a particular piece of property, then they engage with the township whether or not the zoning is appropriate for what the use is. And when they reached out to us, which would have been sometime probably back in September of 2020, asking whether or not this particular piece of property was zoned appropriately for a gun range, the answer was yes, based on the zoning that is, the law in the township. The zoning ordinance allowed for a gun range as an indoor recreation use, and then also the retail component of it was also allowed in that district. So everything that's inside of the building was allowed and is allowed as per the zoning when they reached out to us. So, and again, the zoning ordinance is the law for land use in our community. Lisa, I don't know if you can bring that PowerPoint up for me, and I'll kind of go through some of the land use issues that are associated with this project. This development is going to be for, and you can go to the next slide if you would, please, for a 15,000 square foot shooting range. 11,130 square feet of this development will actually be devoted to the range itself. The other uses, primary uses within the building, or secondary uses rather, are going to be 3,000 square feet of retail sales floor and 785 square feet being used for classroom space. Approximately 74% of the building itself, however, is dedicated to the range use inside the building. And then to kind of go through a timeline for this process, because this is a planned development, it's the most intensive approval process that the township has with regard to the need for public hearings and public meetings. It started on January 11th, 2022, with the Planning Commission approving the Stage 1 preliminary site plan for Range USA and making a recommendation to the Township Board of Trustees that the Stage 1 approval be considered and approved based on a public hearing and the fact that the zoning was consistent and that they had met, Range USA had met and achieved all of the land use items in the zoning ordinance with regard to things like setbacks, parking requirements, lighting, landscaping, and all of those types of issues. It then went for stage 1 approval before the township board on March 1st, where the township board approved the stage 1 plan development. And then after that meeting, it was up to Range USA to come with final engineering and site plans, as well as a final development agreement, and provided that a few different iterations that were reviewed by the planning department until such time that it was considered ready to go before the Planning Commission, which it did on March 22nd, 2022, for stage 2 final site plan and detailed engineering. And at that time, the Planning Commission again recommended approval by the Board of Trustees based on the fact that the stage 2 plan was in conformance with the stage 1 plan, and that's the language used in the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission would recommend approval as long as the stage 2 final plan is in conformance with what was approved at stage 1, which it was. They're basically the same plan. And then so that's where we are at this evening, is with the stage 2 recommendation from the Planning Commission to the board for your consideration. And then Lisa, if you'd be so kind, this is just a snapshot of the neighborhood where this particular business is seeking to locate. James L. Hart Parkway is in what's considered the Washtenaw Business Park. It's a mix of a lot of different uses. The immediate neighbors to Range USA would be Bank Supplies, which is a business that handles and sells online. They're an online retailer of all things money related for banks and casinos. They don't really have, people don't go to Bank Supplies per se and purchase things directly from there. It's more of an office and online sales business. Interclean Equipment, Adams Advertising, the Fairfield Inn, the Hampton Inn, and then the other big user next to what would be Range USA is LaFontaine Kia. They both share a stormwater area in that sort of green space that separates the two, and then it's bordered on the north by what is I-94, the interstate. If you would please. This is the site plan. This basically they're utilizing the parking lot area that was next to Bank Supplies that really doesn't see any activity. It's sort of been a vacant parking lot for at least the last 5 to 10 years. They would be excavating out a portion of that parking lot to locate the gun range and then utilizing the space around it, including the curb cut on James L. Hart Parkway that already exists for entrance to the site. And then they would also be supplementing additional landscaping into the site as is required per the zoning ordinance. Lisa, if you could go to the next slide, just short of as a call out of the EV charging stations that were a condition of the Planning Commission's approval. There's some debate as to the level of EV stations that might be used in this application. The township is requesting the applicant to use level 3. I think the applicant's more comfortable with level 2. I think a consideration could be made where the planning department could work with the applicant to kind of arrive at what the best fit would be. Maybe there's one level 3 or one of each. I'm not real sure of that arrangement, but at least on this site plan, which is an exhibit to the development agreement, it's clearly called out that 2 EV parking spaces will be as a part of this overall development. Good. And then again, the landscaping plan, this is just the finalized, includes the Planning Commission's wishes that they use a native plant species and materials that are ecologically friendly to the environment as a part of their overall project in the landscaping that they would supplement in and around the building. And then this is the final elevation that was chose for this particular site. It mirrors a lot of the other buildings in the James L. Hart Parkway area using different tones of brick and some different architectural elevations to break up the front facade so that it just doesn't look like a box. It has an awning. It includes their orange color, which is sort of part of their branding. And we work with them to kind of incorporate that into the facade and still do it in such a way that it looks tasteful. Next slide. And then the development agreement summary, which is a big part of this. As a part of this, Range USA has agreed that they will not transfer a firearm until it receives a proceed notice from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. That's a very big key portion of this development agreement that Attorney Winters helped the planning department, along with the attorneys for the developer, negotiate this verbiage be put in the development agreement. It basically says that regardless of the 3-day waiting period, if they don't hear back from the ATF, they'll continue to hold a firearm until they are given a proceed notice to be allowed to do so, which is more than can be said for other firearms sales who don't have to abide by that particular piece of language, where if they haven't heard back from the ATF and after 3 days, they can release the firearm even if they haven't received a formal acknowledgement. Item number 2 basically quantifies and lists all of the physical safety deterrents that they'll have in place, and then gives them, as a part of the language in the development agreement, the ability to update those security features as necessary over the years. As updates become available, we would most certainly want them to do that. But this is sort of the starting point for those physical security features that they would have in place in the building, and it requires them to maintain these in good working order for the life of the building. Item number 3 are the conditions of the Planning Commission. Again, the Planning Commission had some conditions of EV charging stations and the use of native plants. And then item number 4 is standard language that's contained in most of our development agreements, including performance bonds, development bonds, how those will be arrived at and calculated by the township's engineer, long-term maintenance of the site. There's some language in there with regard to easements and the turning over of easements to the responsible parties, and then also the long-term responsibilities of both the developer and the township. So those are sort of the key components. Again, items number 1 and 2 are sort of tied directly to the safety aspects of the building, and then the business itself. Item 3, that language is in there from the Planning Commission. Those are the Planning Commission's recommendations. And then again, item 4 just kind of highlights that the rest of the document's filled with sort of the standard language that would be found in a planned development agreement that references sort of those items that I just went over. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have from a land use perspective or zoning perspective about this particular project. And again, this wasn't something where the planning department goes out and asks for people to come to town. There seems to be sometimes a misnomer that the planning department somehow, sometimes folks will come to the planning department and they'll say, we really need a Panera Bread. You need to get us one of those. And the reality is that's not how it works. We don't call national tenants or retailers and try to coax them to come to a particular location. They do very in-depth market analysis for their own products, goods, and services, and they arrive at the particular locations that are best suited to them. And in this case, I'm sure if asked, this developer would tell you that they arrived at this particular location through that same process, that the township didn't reach out to them and ask them to bring the store to town, that through site selection and market studies, they arrived at this particular location. So,
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions or comments regarding the planning department's report? Trustee Swanton?
So the map that showed the properties, you've talked twice about how the vacant lot is used for stormwater. I'm guessing that's still a parcel.
It is, yeah.
So what happens if at some point that becomes a buildable parcel and you've got properties that are adjacent that are using it for stormwater.
So the rights of that parcel and the use of the stormwater are actually tied to another development agreement that's a part of that overall area that talks about that shared stormwater between what is LaFontaine Kia and what used to be University Chrysler. So it's a shared basin that there's common ownership there through legal agreements. Now, I don't know all the exact details, but that's sort of how that arrangement worked when they both developed at the same time. That they.
Is the intention then that won't be a developed parcel because it's?
Yes, it's encumbered by stormwater. That's right. And you can sort of see in that aerial, sort of the front part of that, you can tell it's got sort of that wetland vegetation, that brownish look to it, where the stormwater goes for both of these developments.
Any other questions or comments for Jason?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Jason, I know that you did a good job, and we've had lots of discussions over this, but just, to reiterate, this particular parcel was not simply B3 zoning. It had that overlay of a planned development, which has actually allowed our township to put in place more of those preventative measures that you spoke about, specifically the point, or the first point that you made in your PowerPoint. And so if you could just talk about that process a little bit more, and, the fact that with you and Attorney Winters, we've really tried to do as much as we can to put in place safeguards that we're able to.
Right. So this particular piece of property was already zoned planned development. The underlying zoning from years past was B3, general business, which is the type of zoning that you would find like along Washtenaw Avenue, parts of Michigan Avenue, in various places. Trying to think of some other general business districts off the top of my head, but those are two relatively bigger ones. There are other general business districts in the township. This type of use is a permitted use in the B3 general business district in the zoning ordinance standards when this project was formally submitted to the township. And had this particular parcel not been zoned PD and zoned B3, there would not have been a public hearing. It would have only gone to the Planning Commission once, and the detailed engineering would have been done administratively along with final site plan, and there would most likely not have been a planned development agreement attached to it. So the fact that they chose this site and that it happened to be PD zoned already, the township saw that and the planning department saw that as the opportunity to be able to get additional protections in place for this type of business through the planned development agreement that otherwise wouldn't have been there, including this language that's very strong that says they will not release a firearm to a prospective purchaser without notice to proceed from the ATF, which is not not the policy of other retailers, certainly, and, not, the fact that we have that in the development agreement is a very big deal, I think, as well as all of the security measures that they've identified and were willing to list, the amounts, the quantities, and the types. And then further, the fact that they wanted additional language added into that portion of it that says that they have the right to update those as necessary and need be without having to come back to us, which of course we would want them to do that. If someone builds a stronger lock or has a better alarm system and you want to go and update that, then, that's something that we just want them to be motivated to do, which they are. So, I think it's fortunate that they arrived at this particular site, at least in my opinion, because it gives us the power to bind some of these things into a development agreement, which we otherwise wouldn't have been able to.
Any other? Trustee Swanson?
So I'm wondering about the list that you had of the agreement. If we could put that up. The expectation that they're working I can appreciate that, but we've had, I don't know if Attorney Winters, you'd have to correct me, I don't know some of the other things that have happened recently where we're going back. I don't know if those were development agreements or what those agreements are, but if it's in a development agreement, like what's the expectation? I know that they want to update them and that they're going to maintain them, but what's the expectation that they're working? Because we've run into situations where we've had development agreements with other entities, and the cameras in particular are, we find out after that they're not, like, how does that happen? Like, if we expect it and we expect it to be maintained, like, what's the feedback loop to know if that's not occurring?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, the fact that these are enshrined in the development agreement gives us more leverage than we normally would, in the sense that if this were just a B3 zoning and they were going to put these types of implementations into their project, really they wouldn't disclose any of that kind of information typically. And then if it wasn't working, we really wouldn't have anything to come back on other than, I mean, they need to secure their own business. It's their liability to make sure that at night the door is locked, and the cameras are switched on and all the other, those types of things. So this gives us the authority to make sure that that stuff is well maintained. Now, as far as who goes out and looks at it, I mean, some of those issues that I think you're speaking about, like basins that have failed and issues like that, and like apartment complexes and other issues like that, it's one of those things where those maintenance issues come within 20 or 30 years due to the proprietor not taking care of them, and then we become aware of it and have to step in. But I think these are two not related things. Stormwater basins failing or something where the property management company in an apartment building kind of over the years loses track of the fact that that's what that particular thing is supposed to be doing and the functionality of it, whereas this is integral to their entire operation. So for them to allow these things to fail, would be
But I feel like the development
critical.
agreement, the purpose of the development agreement is not, is a shared opportunity to have a say. Do we have the right, and this might be a question for Attorney Winters, do we have the right to, like in those development agreements, when something like this is drafted, do we have the right to go and inspect or to look or to see? Like if you've said there's going to be 31 high-resolution cameras, do we have the ability to, and I know that we can't, well, it wouldn't be a good idea. I'm not suggesting that we would just go pick a particular business and we would go do that. But we've gone through COVID. We now have a fully staffed or almost fully staffed ordinance department. I'm just trying to understand what would be the process, because we wouldn't enter into a development agreement for the purposes of, I'm not trying to be unkind to the business owner. I'm just saying we were entering into this because there's something we want out of it. And so there's got to be a feedback loop. I don't know how that happens. I just know when it doesn't work, I know that we end up in another situation, which we have in quite a few different businesses for a variety of reasons.
Mr. Winter?
Maybe I can help. This is a contractual agreement between the township and the owner. This agreement will be recorded with the Washtenaw County Register of Deeds. We will have legal standing to enforce this agreement. We have the Office of Community Standards, who also requires all of our businesses to be registered. I don't know exactly their rotation for inspecting the businesses, but we have the right to do this. Some of the problems that we had with the apartment complexes was because some of the people they actually when they changed hands or changed management companies, they themselves were not aware that they even had a development agreement until we brought it to their attention. And so we obviously threatened to to go to court necessary if they were not brought into compliance. And one, of course, was the Huron Heights, Huron Ridge apartment complex that had not installed the security camera, had allowed those to languish and not be installed correctly. And the detention basin had collapsed to where apartments were flooded. This came to our attention and we responded, and they're now in compliance. This agreement here, again, it's a contractual one. Both parties have made certain promises, covenants, and we expect them to do what is set forth in the agreement, and we would have a right to enforce this agreement if it came to our attention through inspection or otherwise that it was not being complied with. So that's why it's probably stated more than one time in the agreement that it is binding upon successors, assigns. It's recorded. It's a restrictive covenant on the property itself, and the only way that it can be changed is through an amendment between the owner and the township. So in terms of at least having legal standing to enforce the agreement, that's what we would expect from any type of a development agreement that gives the township the legal right to say this agreement requires this. That's one reason why we wanted the specificity of the actual security system. We wanted to know exactly what type of cameras, how many are going to be installed. We also have the requirement that they will maintain those recordings for 45 days and make them available to the law enforcement, not to the township board, but to law enforcement upon their request. So I guess the simple way of saying this is that it is a contractual agreement that the township has legal standing to enforce.
Other questions? Trustee Newman?
Yes, to piggyback on that question, before the business gets started, does the criteria have to be met before it can start business? In other words, does the Planning Commission go and inspect to make sure that that criteria exists?
So that's a good question. Yes, before they're issued a C of O, it will be determined that all of these items are in place per the agreement, as well as all of the other items that would be found in the site plan or final detailed engineering drawings, which will become an exhibit to the development agreement, as well as the building department or architectural drawings for the interior of the building. All of those issues will have to be met prior to them being issued a full C of O.
Thank you.
Other questions? Me? I couldn't hear a word you said. Thank you. Did you want to? Trustee Elder? Treasurer Elder. That's it. Are there any other questions for Jason that is here? All right.
So number one, I've heard you say that's more than what's expected. How does that get enforced? Like, how do we know that that time period how do we know? Like, how do we know that that's being followed?
So that question was asked as a part of the conversations that me and Mr. Winters had with their counsel, and they get a email that's tied to the serial number of the firearm that is going to be leaving, that has the serial number tied to the ATF proceed, delay, or do not. And I'm getting into an area where these are the questions you need to ask the developer when these types of more procedural, but it's my understanding from negotiations that me and Mr. Winters had done that they get the ATF proceed is tied to the individual sale, and they have records, binding numbers, either serial numbers of the weapon or what have you, the firearm at the store itself, that tie the two together. And so as far as us knowing it, I mean, there won't be someone there on a daily basis making sure that they go through this procedure, but we've been told by them that this is their policy, not only for this store, but for all of their stores, not only in the state of Michigan, but throughout the Midwest. But again, that's something where you probably should get that straight from them, because I don't want to, I don't want to misspeak for what their policies are. But again, this is what their policy is, and then we said, well, if this is indeed your policy, then you'll have no issue putting it into a development agreement, and they agreed to that. So.
But the law currently is, if you purchase a gun and you wait 3 days, if the gun seller doesn't hear from the BATFE, which is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, then you as a gun seller could sell it at that point.
It's my understanding that they can release the firearm to the prospective purchaser. And then it was also told to me, and again, you should ask them these questions because I think it's important, but they said that if they release a firearm without a proceed after the 3-day window, and then the ATF comes back with this person should not have the firearm, it's then incumbent upon the company that did that to reach back out to that person and say, you need to bring the firearm back to the store or the ATF is going to come and retrieve it from you. And so their policy, this policy for them is sort of a way of ensuring that scenario doesn't play out, because they wait however long it takes until they get a proceed, so they're not in a position to have to do that, where they're calling people who they've released a firearm to and saying, you need to either bring this back to the store or the federal government's going to come and get it back. So, but again, I think they're better suited to answer these questions than me.
Yeah, could someone from the Range USA, I want to, that question.
I'll just step back for just a bit and let this gentleman speak with you folks. And if you have any further questions, I'm happy to come back up.
Hello, my name is Kevin Ali. I am with Range USA. So in regards to the Brady Bill is what we're talking about. This is our company-wide policy. So federal law says after 3 days, the gun can be sold. It can be, you can come in, pick it up, and leave with it. Our company-wide policy, all of our stores, no gun leaves our store until we have a proceed message from the ATF. We, in our home office, have numerous self-auditors. So we audit our own 4473 records. We audit our own inventories. So we have guys that go out and they take care of certain areas around the country. One person might have 4 or 5 stores in this market. Someone has Texas stores. We self-audit our managers in our store's behavior. So we can tell if a gun left our store without a proceed message from the ATF. So we self-audit that process. And our company-wide policy is no gun leaves the store unless we have a proceed message from the ATF.
Since you're at the podium, could you tell us about your company and some of the issues that were raised by residents and other members of the community in the area? Just address some of the concerns.
Absolutely. Range USA is the largest indoor gun range chain in the country by far. We have 32 stores open. We have like 4 or 5 under construction today and 7 more that should start construction within the next probably 60 days. We recently did change our name from Shoot Point Blank to Range USA for a couple reasons. One is we're the only ones trying to go from one end of the country to the other, and we felt as though Range USA described who we are and what we are a whole lot better. We had a letter come into our store, to our home office, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago that said, I saw your name in your store, thought it was wildly offensive. I swore I would never step inside your store. Well, he must have at some point in time changed his mind, went into our store, and sends a letter and says, you know what, you are nothing like your name. Absolutely nothing at all like your name. Horrible choice, horrible name. You're welcoming, you're, you were focused on gun safety, on storage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Your name is doing you a disservice. So I'm the one that goes to the Planning Commission meetings, the City Council meetings, and I have never liked the name, so I'm thrilled that it is Range USA. We are the nation's largest gun safety educator by far. It's not even close. In 2020, I think we educated almost 70,000 people. And last year, we educated between 45 and 50,000 people. We have online classes. We have private lessons. We have concealed carry classes. In Texas, we put on classes that are church security team classes. So the classes change on a regular basis. If there is a need in a certain part of the country or community, that's the kind of classes that we will put on. So whatever people want. Basic handgun safety courses is one of our biggest. The nation's going to constitutional carry, one state at a time. We don't necessarily agree with constitutional carry. We think there's nothing wrong with taking a class for 6, 7, 8 hours, having a proficiency test, and fully understanding the rules and regulations, the liability and the responsibility that comes with a concealed carry permit. We do a number of things differently than anybody else does. Our behavior with the Brady Bill, wildly different. I would imagine there are very, very few other gun stores in the country that don't follow the Brady Bill. We concentrate on the neophyte, first-time buyer. So if you can break down an AR-15 blindfolded, you probably have somewhere better to go buy your guns. The majority of our store, you can see, is dedicated to the range. We are not the biggest gun peddler in the world. We are the gun safety peddler in the world, the educator. That's what our mission is safe and responsible gun ownership. We look for locations that I would send my wife to at night by herself. We don't go into questionable neighborhoods. We don't go to where we put our employees or customers in a precarious situation. And for the record, I pursued Ypsilanti Township. No one contacted me. No one tried to sell us on Ypsilanti Township. It was us that came to you, just to be clear. The letter that was sent in, I thought the best way to respond to the letter would be in person. So that's why I'm here tonight, is predominantly this correspondence. There was an incident in Maryville, Indiana, and our range, and so for context, in this letter, these incidents range back to 2016, for context. Also for context, last year, we had 778,000 people shoot on our range, approximately 778,000. We had approximately 50 million rounds fired in our range. This could be classes, this could be individuals, this could be a number of different things, but approximately 50 million rounds. We spent $1.5 million last year on range safety officers. So that is a person that walks back and forth in the range. If we have one person shooting, we have at least a range safety officer inside the range. They're looking at safe behavior. They're correcting unsafe behavior. So we spent $1.5 million. That's not a federal law. It's not a mandate. That's what we do to try and keep the range as safe as possible. Maryville, we have rules in our range, safety rules, for a reason. And if they're blatantly disregarded, the consequences can be absolutely catastrophic. Our range safety officer corrected unsafe behavior. They went right back to the exact same behavior. They were corrected a second time. Wildly disregarded seconds after he walked out of their sight. And when the rules inside the range are blatantly disregarded, the consequences can be catastrophic. So, learning from that lesson, we are trying to come up with a policy that will address people working on social media posts inside the range. Another incident was in Shorewood. A man was trying to, yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Can you just go back to that for a moment?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned social media posts. Can you expound on how that was involved here?
Can't drive and text.
There was, there was an attempt to make social media videos to post.
This is outrageous.
Can you go just a little bit more? There was social media posts.
You know what? I think I've covered it. To be brutally honest, I think it is the wildly reckless behavior. They disregarded the corrective recommendations from the range safety officer. It involved phones and videos, and it was for a social media post. And the consequences were catastrophic. We've had a couple suicides. We realize suicides are an issue. So we have figured out that the MO of a suicide is a male. He comes in by himself. He's never been in our store before, doesn't have a gun, and he wants to shoot on the range. So we have a policy now that if a male comes in by himself, never been in our store, doesn't have a gun, and wants to shoot on the range, we will not let them. If they come in with another member or another person that's been in our store before, that's fine. If they come in by themselves, then we will not let them shoot on the range. We get all kinds of grief online for this, but if it stops one suicide, it's worth it. There was a robbery in Memphis, Tennessee. This was during the year of civil unrest and riots. And yes, someone cut into the ductwork, climbed into the store, and made off with a number of guns. Suspects have been arrested. All guns were recovered.
Let's be.
You're not really addressing the issues.
Let's please wait. Ma'am, you'll have another time to speak. We're going to let,
Okay.
I promise, everyone's going to have the right to speak again.
All guns recovered, suspects arrested. We like to think that some of the exterior safety things that we have in place helped law enforcement identify and corral and get those guns back. So we've learned some lessons. Naperville, that robbery was during a night of lawless looting in the suburbs. For everyone's reference, Naperville was probably an hour drive west of Chicago. Very, very nice neighborhood. There was wide-scale looting all throughout Naperville, Mokina, Tinley Park, Orland Park, etc. There was no police response whatsoever. They were going to life safety issues only. And these gentlemen had 15, 20 minutes to bang, beat, and pry on a door, and they got it open. There have been arrests, all guns recovered. So we have learned that being burglar resistant is not good enough. We need to be riot resistant. So we've changed the doors that we have. We went throughout the entire company, and we replaced every single exterior door, minus the front doors, because we have a hurricane shutter on those, to a 5-point DTEX locking system door. So that's a bolt goes in the ceiling, a bolt goes in the floor, a regular bolt goes where it would on like anyone's door, and then we have 2 bolts that go in to the hinge side of the door. So someone could saw the hinges off, and that door's still not coming out of place. So it is going to give law enforcement much more time to show up and stop. The Memphis, cutting into the ductwork, I forgot to mention, we learned. So now we have more motion sensors, and we have now vibration sensors on the ductwork to set off alarms long before they ever get close to being inside the store. You know what, let me make sure that was the... Yes, so that is correct. There was one other burglary where a man climbed up to a window that was very skinny, 15 feet off the ground. Got in, got away with some guns. He has not been caught, and we have not recovered those guns. I think it was 3 or 6 guns. So now, all of our stores, we don't do windows unless the community makes us do windows. Your store here, this store, if we go into Ypsi, has fake windows. It's glazing. There's no window opening whatsoever. So no windows at all. That is due. So every single one of these incidents, we have learned and we have made corrective steps to limit their ability to get in. Concrete ballers outside of every exterior entrance. Hurricane shutter on the front door. We'll work hand in hand with your police department and fire department. Safety of a store is a balance between life safety and burglar safety. So, some of the things we might want to do won't make the fire chief real happy. So we'll work hand in hand. If they have suggestions on things that we could do, should do, they'd like for us to do, we're all ears. If your police department wants to have access to our cameras inside their station, we're more than happy to set that up. We want to be good members of the community, and we want you to be happy that we're here 1 year, 2 year, and 5 years later. We have 2 stores in this market. We have one in Clinton Township, and we have one in Wixom. There's no safety complaints. There's been no issues. There's no noise complaints. We've been good neighbors there, and that's what we'll do here as well.
Can you address the questions regarding the noise and the noise suppression?
Yes, ma'am. So we've built this building now 30-plus times. So we have gotten much better over the last numerous years on making sure we contain sound. So inside the range, it's a solid concrete box. We use solid doors. We use rubber gaskets around all the doors. We spray a foam on the ceiling and the walls down so far. It's called K13. It's sound-absorbing foam, or insulation, I should say. We have large rubber mats. Those are also sound-absorbing that we have in the shooting stalls. We have... So our store is a concrete box inside of a concrete box. So the store is solid walls. So if it's CMU, we backfill that with concrete. And then the range walls are also solid filled. We won't violate your noise ordinance, not even close. Our noise that emits from our building will be much less than what comes from the highway. I think noise, has anyone been to any of our other stores in this market? You could stand in the parking lot. The building that we have built twice already here is what we'd like to build in Ypsi. So whatever safety features are there is what we want to do here. Whatever the sound was outside the store there is what it would most likely be here. It will be negligible. It would not be silent. It will be negligible.
Are there other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have
Trustee
to ask
Peterson.
this. So you say you made all these adjustments.
Yes, ma'am.
How long ago have you made these adjustments?
The adjustments for the doors from...
No, I'm not talking about no doors. All these incidents that so-called has happened. How long have you made these adjustments?
The adjustments...
You said you made all the adjustments in Indiana. What else? The other 3 stories you had, the person coming through the vents.
Yes, ma'am.
The person that shot himself, and so on.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, within time limit, how long have you made this adjustment? Was it 3 years ago? Have those stores been operating for 10 years? When did you make those adjustments?
Well, these incidents, like I said, date back to 2016, so each one of them would be different. But we have reacted very quickly.
And so what is quickly? After you find out what happens?
Yes, ma'am. I think we switched all the doors in our company probably within 6 months of the riots.
6 months?
Yes, ma'am. Now, I don't know an exact date, but we have responded very, very quickly. This is not something that was done 2 weeks ago before we came in here. Mm-hmm. This is something that was done years ago.
I wouldn't predict it was 2 months before you came in. I'm saying when those incidents happened, I would hope the company would take action and correct the action so these things don't occur.
I concur.
Yeah, you say I concur. But what I'm saying is, sir, you say it's 6 months to correct something, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And I will hope, you don't know what happens in no business, to tell the truth, okay? No business. And so, does our police department come out? Do that board or whoever is the board of that business make a adjustment to correct the action, okay? So, and I'll get to where my point is. I sit on the planning commission, and, I'm for the gun range, and I know people is for the gun range, and I'm telling you, I am not, again, don't like violence. One or two of those names, I know those names, okay? But I'm telling you, when you came to Planning Board Commission, I have to be honest with myself. You never mentioned the incidents. And that's what I want to hear from your company today, why didn't you mention it? Who else sits on the board? I guess it's just me on the board. You know, we got to be fair with the people. I'm telling you, and if it wasn't for somebody in the community that brought up those incidents, we wouldn't have known. Because we asked you, sir, how was the businesses? You said, I don't know who said it up there, you had no complaints. And maybe Jason's sitting there, he could testify to that, and you can look at the minutes, I believe he said it. And I'm telling you, sir, I'm not against the range, because I believe it educates how to go to the range, safety issues. I believe those guns should be licensed and whatever, documented. I don't know what they do in there, but those guns should be documented. You have so many guns in the street. That's not our, you know, I guess we do oversee some of the police department, I guess, but the police department has to take care of their end too, okay? But I'm telling you, I sit right here. We asked you all the safety questions. You never mentioned it. So my question is, when those incidents happen, I would hope the business and the director or whoever it is will act on those issues and correct that situation really fast, because you're in communities. Something happens out there, I hope to God you correct it, do what you have to do. But I'm telling you, I sit right there, and it was not answered.
Well, I will apologize for not being here and being the one that answered those questions.
Well, is there one person who came, wait a minute, I have the floor. Madam Chair, do I have the floor?
Yes, you do.
So I will hope there's nobody in the audience. There's a procedure to speak. So my question is also, so who was here when they came to the Planning Commission meeting and answered that question? Can he step to the mic? And again, sir, I'm not down in the range. I'm not, but it's an understanding of truth, okay? And facts.
Ken Knuckles, Development Management Group.
Yes, it was you. I'm sorry. Mr. Knuckles, we asked that question. Why didn't somebody say something? You could have gave us that explanation that night.
Okay, first of all, I'm not aware of these incidents. I don't work for Range USA. I don't work for the tenant.
Let's be respectful.
Okay. There were a lot of questions asked. Specifically, you'll recall one of them you asked about certain processes or procedures or those kinds of things, and I told you at the time, I'm answering those things to the best of my ability because I'm not the tenant, but my understanding of what the proper response to that is this. So I made it clear at that meeting when we talked about it that I'm giving you the information and the response to the best of my ability because I was not the tenant. We work for the developer, the owner.
Well, I just want to be honest about it, but also I think Jason and I think our legal firms are putting some conditions in this agreement between us, the township, and the range. Without those conditions, it's so important. And I want to thank you because there are going to be some legal binding, contract between you guys and the township. And I think if it doesn't happen, then we got to deal with it, okay? So I hope you understand those. We were very precise. Stan used to be on the Planning Commission meeting also. He took another seat at Treasurer. We were very precise. I think it's in the language. And I could say to Attorney Winters, I think it's there, and you spoke on it. And that's going to make the difference, I believe.
Okay.
So don't think you come here, stepping here, just being, nonchalant. I think the township has to know what's going on, and you got to immediately respond to us.
Correct.
I thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to respond to the questions that have come up on this development agreement, specifically all the bullet points that you guys have listed on there for all the security measures. The measures that are listed up there are all steps that Range USA takes at every one of those locations. Nobody came to them and said, will you agree to this list of things to put in your store? That documents what they do at every location from a security and safety standpoint.
Can I stop you right there?
Sure.
Are you saying other people in other states Never came and put conditions on?
I can't say that.
Well,
I
I
have no
thought you
idea.
just said that. Is that what you're saying?
No.
I'm just trying to get an understanding.
This is what they put in all of their new stores. This is their package for security and safety,
Okay, now
Okay.
I got that, okay.
to be clear. So this isn't something that somebody came to the owner or to Range USA and said, we need you to agree to do all of this stuff. It's stuff they already do. So I just want to make a point in response to that.
Thank you. I don't want to say something.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to be clear that a plan development agreement is binding to that property and for that use in perpetuity, which means forever. And other places don't have plan development agreements binding them to these agreements, regardless of if Range USA is the owner or not. So to simply say that every range across the country has these in place and that a municipality required that of them, and it's wonderful, and thank you so much for agreeing to these conditions. But without a plan development, there is no legally binding contract to require a business to adhere to a township's requirement and standard and expectations of safety within our community. So I just wanted that to be clear, because if you don't work in zoning and you don't hear these things every day, you don't understand the implications that a plan development agreement has. And so it is in perpetuity forever, even if it changes hands or owners. The same way that an apartment complex, if they have a plan development and they're required to maintain their retention basin, it doesn't matter if it changes owners 6 times or 20 years from now, they're still required to adhere to those standards. So I just wanted that to be clear for everyone in the audience today.
Thank you. Other questions?
Madam Chair, I'm going to go back to my colleague at the end, Trustee Swanson, back to the video cameras, because I think I know what she's trying to get at. Because since I was on the Planning Commission and now Trustee Swanson, we've required video cameras everywhere. And so I think she's asking, how do we know that they're working should an incident occur, rather than having us on a cycle to check those? And I think you mentioned it a few moments ago. If I heard you correctly, you provide, if requested, a live feed to the police agency that oversees that municipality.
Yes, sir.
So if our sheriff's department were to ask for that live feed, they could see what's going on in and outside of that store 24/7. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. That is my impression. Yes, sir.
And so they would know, and we would know through them. So, and we haven't asked them that. So just to be clear, we have not asked the sheriff to do that or even broach that. But I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, because I think that's what the trustee was trying to get at. How do we ensure that those cameras are working correctly at all times? So I'll have another one in just a moment, but I'll pass for the moment.
Trustee Swanson, did you have another?
Madam Chair. Yes. I just wanted to make a comment that the same issues that were brought up from Trustee Peterson are the same issues I've had since information has come forth since our last board meeting about all these different incidents. And I believe it was Mr. Knuckles that came and said that how safe everything was, no incidents. And I have the same concern that, I feel like during this process we've been lied to. And for that reason, I'll have to vote no on this item.
Respectfully, with just last year, 778,000 shooters and 50 million rounds downrange in 1 year, statistically speaking, and remember, these incidents go back to 2016. Statistically speaking, incidents are few and far between.
One's too many. One's too many.
I agree.
Mr. Treasurer Eldridge.
I'm sorry. I guess I want to maybe go back for a moment, either to planning director or to the attorney, and just help me understand a little bit better where we sit on a plan or a stage 2. It's my understanding, Jason, and maybe these folks can help me, this land's already been transferred and sold. Would that be correct? And so we're here at stage 2 now, which is final site. I'd just like to hear legally where we're at on that.
Well, I stated earlier in a different matter that all board members take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution, laws, or ordinances. In this township in the state of Michigan, there is probably no more of a legalistic document in the township than the township's zoning ordinance. It's a legal document that the township, by state law, has to follow when it establishes zoning districts, uses permitted within zoning districts. I just mentioned earlier tonight in an unrelated matter how the township had just updated its zoning ordinance, and that process took about 3 years. Now, in regards to Range USA, as we sit here this evening, going back probably to June of last year, Range USA did something that a lot of people, a lot of developers don't do. They actually submitted a zoning verification letter at the beginning of the process to ask the township, is this a permitted use, a gun range, retail, education classes, is this a permitted use at this location? The township's plan director informed the township of this request, did the due diligence, and responded to them, yes, it is. That was correct statement at that time, and it's correct today. Now, in regards to where you stand, quote unquote, legally, there's been a few comments about, liability, lawsuits, et cetera. And I would say this at the outset. Since 1984, this township probably has had as many lawsuits filed against us for different reasons that we can't control. We've also not backed away from any lawsuit that we felt there was a legal basis to follow. The township has been involved in a number of high-profile litigation lawsuits over the years. It's also one that the township has to also be mindful that we cannot, as a township, be arbitrary and capricious. And those of you who have some background in law enforcement, prison systems, are aware that arbitrary and capricious means you can't just simply pick and choose when you're going to follow your established laws, your established ordinances. We've been involved with issues pertaining to a parole office trying to locate near a daycare center that was in violation of our ordinance, and we pursued that. They're not there. Township right now is at a crossroads in a number of different issues, but legally we have to follow what our zoning ordinance mandates us to do. In this case right now, this is a permitted use at this location. Now, as far as the specificity of the security measures that are in this document, I would probably disagree on one comment by Mr. Knuckles. It's good to have a policy today. Those policies can change tomorrow. And so that's why these specific security measures are in this document, because it does give the township a legal basis to ensure contractually that these security measures are going to be installed, operational, and enforceable, number one. Number two, a lot of the issues that come up at the township level really are beyond the township's control to effectuate. The Brady Bill is a federal law that says right now that after 3 days, if there's no response from the ATF, that firearm can be released. That may be a policy of Range USA today. It may not be a policy of their competitors if down the road they decided to sell this business to somebody else who would come in and say, we're not going to follow that policy because we don't have to. The federal law does not require us to do so. In this agreement, if that scenario did happen, the answer would be no. You too would have to follow the same process. You could not release any of these guns that are for sale at a retail location without having a proceed response from the ATF. I cannot emphasize that enough because I do know from the research I've done that, 3 days sometimes is not enough for a background search to be completed. So in this situation, from Range USA standpoint, it doesn't matter because whether it's 3 days, 13 days, 30 days, that gun cannot be released without having a proceed authorization from the ATF. Now, and I think I can probably, give you an overarching view because of being here for as many years. There's 56,000 residents in this township, and township board does not wilt under any kind of pressure from anybody in regards to, going to court or having lawsuits. But at the same time, I'm never going to recommend to the township board or invite them to get engaged in a lawsuit that knowingly right now would not be one that the township could prevail and subject this township and the township residents and township taxpayers to untold amount of liability because we were being, quote, arbitrary and capricious. I know someone spoke from earlier from Ann Arbor about the, not against this, and I would just say I know Ann Arbor Arms is located western part of the county. And I'm just saying right now, I think I can stand behind this contractual document. I can't guarantee to the board, nor would I, that there would not be something else that could happen at any of our business locations, including Range USA. But I can say that from a legal standpoint, they have met the criteria set forth in the township zoning ordinance. They have put pen to paper in regards to identifying the security cameras and the security system and the hurricane doors. The Planning Commission recommended interior and exterior cameras, but nobody really specified the degree or the number of cameras or the type of security, and that's why you'll see the 31 high-resolution IP cameras, 5 audio glass sensors, 7 vibration detectors, 6 door contacts, etc., and also the obligation or the right for them to continue to improve and update any security provisions at the property. I think right now that for the township to be in a position where they would be arbitrary and capricious would put the township as a whole, the whole township, at risk. And as the legal counsel, I'm never going to recommend the township knowingly invite itself as a defendant in a lawsuit when we would be standing before a court in contradiction or contravention of what our zoning ordinance says is allowed when we have on record a zoning verification letter that says this is a legal use at this location. So, again, a lot of the issues are beyond the township's immediate control. I don't have the authority to do some of the things that probably I would like to do if I had the authority to do it, but I do have the responsibility to advise this board not to be arbitrary and capricious and to proceed in a good faith manner, as you've always done in evaluating land use decisions, because again, our zoning ordinance is probably the most legalistic document that we have in the township, and it's one that is binding upon the township, and is one that has always in the past been our guide to making these type of land use decisions based upon our existing policy.
Mr. Winters, we can, however, in the future, change where it's currently allowed to go, like we have in the past, when there's something that comes in and it was by right, we made it by special condition, and there was other ways. Because right now, under our current ordinance, it's Zone B3, it's an allowable retail use. So we can change it in the future, not on this one, but in the future, so that, like, I've been here 32 years. This is the first gun range that we've had that's allowed by ordinance. And because it is a PD, we did get a development agreement, which I know some people really don't appreciate it, but from my perspective, at least it guarantees, like Trustee Gloria said, it guarantees that it goes with the land. So if Range USA goes tomorrow, these same binding agreements and the requirement that they have this background check, even though there's a lot of gun sellers and individually, you know, they sell them in Dunham's, they sell them, there's a lot of places and people that sell guns that don't make sure that they get that approval from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And I think by memorializing that in an agreement, it is required. And it's incumbent on us. I don't know what that process is, or perhaps the sheriff department knows more about it, but how you track that, you know, at a federal level, or is it a state? I'm not sure if it's federal or state, but, and speaking of federal, they've tried to change these laws how many times at the federal level, and they haven't done it regarding guns. They have not done it. And the state, as some states have changed, some are different and more encouraging and not as many restrictions. So based upon what is before us and the information we have, I don't see a choice. Legally, I don't see a choice. I think you can do it politically, and we can say things, but at the end of the day, if we get sued and there's a settlement against our taxpayers and our community, then that's a great concern for me. And we fought a lot of fights and a lot of battles. Yeah, you can speak it when we're done here, but I just want to, that's just, it's hard. It's easy to say, you're gonna have to just wait a few minutes.
Oh, I know, I'm just waiting patiently.
And it's easy to say just vote no, but in reality, it's in the proper zoning location. They've done everything that they're supposed to do from a planning standpoint. The decibels, I'm still not clear on the decibels and the ability to hear the sound in other businesses. You explained some of the protections against that. We do have an ordinance that you can't have your noise go outside of your property line. 50 feet is what that is. So we need to make sure that that's adhered to. And I think from a structural standpoint, you've done that. We did not court any gun company to come to Ypsilanti Township. That did not happen. I don't know where that came from, who said that. They have a right to come here. It's zoned properly, but we didn't go out and look for this business. Personally, I've had gun incidents myself and my family. Death. They bought the gun at Walmart. So I understand the concern and can relate to the issues of gun violence. I wasn't going to say that, but Jimmy suggested that I tell that story, so I did. The question I do have, and it was suggested by a resident, do you have safety locks that go with the guns when you sell them? Or would you do that normally? Could you do that as far as having this? I looked it up on the internet, the circular, and one of the residents asked that question.
I have purchased some hunting rifles, and they have come with a lock inside the case. Whether or not all firearms are issued with a lock, I don't know that answer.
The ones that you sell, sir.
I don't know if all the ones that we sell are issued with a lock. I do not know the answer to that question.
All right. Does anyone know? Can you do that? Or is that? So it's not a company policy, or you don't know?
It is not a company policy.
Because I know our sheriff's department has had safety lock distributions before for people in the different areas throughout the county to do that.
We think responsible gun ownership is paramount. And one of the things that we push is how you're going to store it and where you're going to store it. So we feel as though if guns are stored properly, a lot of these incidents would be averted. So we do our best to suggest, okay, what are you using this firearm for? Is it home protection, concealed carry, et cetera, and to point them in the direction of the appropriate safe.
It's just not a policy.
Correct.
All right. Other questions or comments from the board? No? Debbie, did you have one more?
Sorry, there's one minor, I mean, I guess it's not minor, but it's not as concerning as some of the other things that people have talked about tonight. As far as ventilation, and Jason, this might be for you, is there any requirement for like air quality when you're shooting firearms inside a building?
I don't know about the requirements, but I can tell you what we buy and what we put in. We buy Carey's ventilation equipment. It's ventilation equipment that is, it pushes air downrange 1 foot per second. It's about $400,000 worth of equipment just for that ventilation equipment. It the air will go into a series of filters, many filters, starting with big bag filters, finishing up with HEPA filters at the end. The filters catch unspent gunpowder and lead dust. When the filters are full, and in our home office, we can monitor every single store's filters on how full they are. Because as they get more full, the air pressure increases, and we can monitor the air pressure so we know when the filters should be changed. And if the store managers aren't doing that, we have the ability to see it and say, you guys need to change your filters. The filters are put in a OSHA-approved box, so it's a plastic-lined box. They're sealed. They're picked up by a licensed company. We have to show documentation of those filters being changed and then being packaged and shipped off. So that is a process that is monitored by governmental agencies. While we're on that subject, we use a rubber bullet trap system. So the shots go into a mound of rubber. We can run algorithms and estimate how many pounds of lead are in the bullet trap system. So when we get to about 35,000 pounds of lead in the bullet trap system, we have an outside licensed company come in. They vacuum up all of the rubber pieces. What's left on the ground is the lead shot. They shovel it up, put it into 55-gallon drums. It is shipped off, and we are paid for the recyclable lead. So we might get a $25,000, $30,000 check from the recycling company for the lead that was salvaged.
Yeah, so the only other thing, it wouldn't be a question, I just want to say that, I mean, you've been here, everybody who's with you from your company has been here, and they've listened to the comments that our community has made. When you hear the list of those names, those are real names, and you have to know that that's a relationship. And to the audience, I do hear you. I hear what you're saying, Attorney Winters, about the situation we're in. And my hope is that we understand that taking care of our young people and anybody else who might be harmed by violence is a community effort. And it can't be the burden of one particular business. It's going to require all of us, but I also don't want, as a member of this community now, if this goes through, you do share a piece of that. So we have a lot of work to do around the idea that we have to be a safer community and a healthier community and just well in all ways possible. But that's going to take the community and all the different ways that we're not well and we're not safe to work together to figure that out. And I'm here and doing my part every day when I'm not in this job, trying to make sure that that happens as a teacher. But I want the company to know that you're going to be a piece of it. I mean, if you are located here, then the idea of the seriousness of that and the relationship that we have, there's a lot of weight to that. And it's not your singular responsibility, but you are a part of it. And so as a community, when we're figuring out and we're working on this, know that it's more than just hanging up a sign and having things happen there and following a development agreement. It's real people, and it's a real community, and the voices that have been in the room saying the concern, you can hear it, the weight of it. It matters to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other board? Mr. Newman?
Yes, I just had a question. There was a sheet which I was continually looking for that was sent out about all of the incidents, and I was wondering if you addressed all of those incidents on that sheet
I believe so, yes. Now,
that was sent out, because there seemed to be a couple. Like I said, I don't have it with me, but it just seemed to be more than the.
on this sheet, it would have led you to believe that the Naperville store had been robbed multiple times. That is incorrect. It was robbed once. Now, during that night of looting and lawlessness, there were multiple attempts to get in. One group got in. The store was robbed one time only. There is a reference to, I think in Memphis, shoplifting of ammo and firearms. That is incorrect. There was we reported an incident of shoplifting of ammunition. So some of these things, the letter would lead you to believe that we have to fight tooth and nail in communities to get a deal approved. I have gotten approximately 30 deals approved. Over my last 6 years, I've been turned down in city council twice. The letter references Fredericksburg or some burg. I've never heard of that town. I've never been there. So some of these things in here are not reported correctly. I've addressed the ones that are reported correctly and shown that we have taken corrective action on, I think, every single one of these things. We're not doing windows in your store here due to that one incident. Well, all the stores that have windows, we went back and put bars on those windows. So again, it's just that corrective behavior to try and make it as safe as possible.
All right, thank you. So now, if the board's asked her questions, then if it's we're going to have the resident. Oh, I'm sorry?
I'm the developer.
Did you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay. About some of the questions that were.
I'm Mark Addy. I'm the principal in Compton Addy. So we're owner and developer of this project. And I just want to say thank you for letting us be part of this process. I mean, look, there's comments both ways. That's part of why we say the Pledge of Allegiance. We're trying to be a good citizen here. From day one. I met with Jason back in September to really understand the process they were going through to make sure we could address as we went through that. I think the question was asked with regard to the development agreement. Is that normal? No, that's not normal. And we develop all across the country. This is one of the first development agreements that we've ever had to this degree. And we're agreeing to things because we think it's the right thing to do. But we also believe in our client. Range USA, we've done a number of projects for them. We're staking our reputation on them because they're best in class at what they do. I share the concern about guns in our community. You can look at my background on anything. You can see what I spend my day doing on volunteers. But here's a group that is the largest educator of gun safety in the United States. When you go to their range, they're giving you instruction on how to properly operate guns. That's what we need. We need education. We need to be responsible about what we're doing. This is a responsible community citizen. It's the reason we staked our reputation. We're the owner. It's a reason we agreed to these things above and beyond. And you're right. I mean, these are things that we're going to continue to adhere to because we believe in it. We'll continue to be a great citizen for your community. I think if you ask any of the local communities around here that have the operations and you talk to their mayors, they'll say they're best in category what they do. And that's what we are. And will continue to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Now if we can, no, it's.
So first I want for the record, how many of you all voted for this by show of hand?
Pardon me?
By show of hand, how many of you all voted for the planning of this to move forward?
We haven't voted yet.
You voted for the preliminary things to happen.
In March 1st?
Whenever.
Yeah,
how many of you all approved that? Every last one of you? Okay, I just needed that for the record. Now, let me note this. These folks did not disclose all the information to you all. You all made a decision for us because, again, you're not in those seats for yourself. You're in those seats because we put you there, or those who voted at that time to put you there. So with that, we're not looking for these folks to give the information. These are $1 billion business owners. They're not going to come in and care about the community. That was your job before all of this even happened. So you're right. There's nothing that can be done now. If it's done against this, then that means we would have to pay for it. That's not a good thing either. But we trusted you all to do what was right for us, and the fact that it's here right now being voted on and you're basically backed into a corner is not okay. Lastly, and maybe not lastly, but mental health, let's talk about that. He glazed over, oh, there were a couple suicides. Sir, suicide is not a matter of fact situation. It's not something, oh, there were just a couple. No, that is horrible to know that somebody will walk in that business and commit suicide on that property. But have we thought about those who would also walk in that business and maybe not just commit suicide, but take other folks out as well? Have we even thought about that? I don't think it's a lot of things that we have not thought about. And I'm saying we as you all that are sitting in those seats, and now we're here and you all are getting ready to vote for something that is not good for the community. Somebody brought up the benefit. Well, what is the benefit for us of this? I don't see a benefit for now, and I'm not against, I'm a law-abiding gun owner myself. But let me tell you this. At one point in time, many years ago, about 10 years ago, I used one of those gun ranges to plan my own suicide. I went there to learn how to shoot a gun because I did research to find that if you shoot the wrong way, that you could still live. Thank God I did not complete suicide, right? But I'm telling you, these things can be used for negative things within our community. And it was up to each and every one of you. This is why I wanted to know on the record, who allowed this to even be brought here? We had preliminary meetings, we had working sessions, all of that is where those questions should have been asked. And if they did not disclose all of the stuff that was disclosed here today, we shouldn't even be sitting right here right now. I'm embarrassed, I'm appalled, and I believe that we need new leadership. Because if we are going to progress as a township, it is going to have to be with people in those seats that care about the community for real. And this right here, and what you're doing with your lack of those ARPA dollars that you won't put out to the community that really needs it the most, that's despicable. You can't keep doing this type of thing and think that the community is not going to push back, because more of us are awakening and we are coming, and you will pay at election time.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Charles Peterson. I'm the director of Community Move. I'm also a member of the Supreme Felons. I hear a lot about this thing, right? But what y'all not understanding is this. The only benefits that it's going to really benefit is the ones that's not citizens. What I see is this. Young guys pulling up, breaking them cars, trying to find out what kind of weapons they can get out of there. And I see people coming out of their guns place defending themselves. That's what I see. Okay, we had this same little system, right, set up for the dispensaries, right? The lights, the cameras, the doors, all that, right? And what happened? Young guys ran straight through the walls with trucks and took everything. So I hear all this stuff right here, but all I see is little young gangbangers who I know on the block waiting for y'all to open it up. Because they're going to run straight in there. I'm just telling you the real. And you catch them next week, the next game. It's 6 gangs in this neighborhood. 6 gangs in this neighborhood. This is the worst time in history to put something in this community. Yeah. We are doing a lot. We losing a lot of young men and a lot of children in this neighborhood. And the only thing it's going to benefit is the thugs. It ain't going to benefit NAM citizen. Y'all can go in there and shoot all y'all want, but y'all going to be shooting at people that's shooting at y'all and there's guns. That's what I'm telling you. So y'all can make a political or an economical benefit if you want to and open it up. What I'm telling you is this. It's going to make the news every week. Because it's going to be a gangbanger that's going to try to go get a new gun from there. It's going to be guys in there running in there taking the guns. You're going to have all kind of stuff. Already, the most guns, you're not talking about licenses. People that's using the guns ain't got license. They got felons. They don't care about no license, no 3-day turnover. You think they care about that? Only thing they care about is breaking in your house, breaking in your car, and getting that new gun you just registered. Every time they see cars pull up, young guys gonna ride up on bikes and break through them doors because they know they're gonna find something. A gun, some weapons. They're gonna find something because it's on the gun range. And guess what they do now? They smart. They will follow you home. They know how to put trackers on your stuff and follow you. You're not thinking about the real issue. Okay, I ain't got it against a gun range here, but what benefit is it gonna give the community? I'm telling you as a former thug, listening to these young thugs in the street right now, they preparing for it right now. They out there naming what kind of guns they gonna get, what ammos they gonna get. So if y'all don't believe me, pass it, and then you're gonna have the sheriffs running wild. That's all I got to say.
So I think I have a couple questions. It sounds like you had no choice, right? But the more guns, the more harm to public safety. And I think for me, I don't know about other people here, but public safety is not a capricious issue. Okay, I think you can make a case for that. You can also make a case that the company did not negotiate on good faith. They did not disclose those incidents. Here's this representative who's shilling, selling the company, and he didn't even, there were suicides. Whoops, there were robberies. I didn't know about it. So people in our community could easily find that information, and this guy who's representing, I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. So I don't call that good faith. And maybe because, and I'm not necessarily saying, I just want to say for the record that the township courted them, but when a business that has the potential to do damage to a community comes and solicits, then there's an obligation, to do your due diligence and push back. So maybe the word courting, I just want to, with all due respect to the Planning Commission, I just want to clarify that. So I don't know if you could make a case that in the interest of public safety, it's not good. And I'm glad they can train people to be more accurate, so when a mass shooter goes into Ypsilanti High School so he can get more people, right? I mean, Sandy Hook, right? Didn't that guy, he trained at a gun range, right? And what about Crumley, right? So maybe there's nothing you can do, but I would ask the attorney to think about, can you make a case for public safety? Okay, and that's not capricious, and also that they did not negotiate and present their business in good faith. And I have to say, as far as gun range companies go, you guys sound great. Thank you for doing your due diligence. Thank you for making these concessions, but that's not the larger issue.
Thank you for your comment.
Dirk Mackey, Washtenaw, resident and responsible gun owner. I agree. You guys have gone out of your way. I think you're here in good faith. Maybe other people see it different. I think Trustee Swanson hit the nail on the head with in-use verification. That's what we called it at the plant, right before they tore it down, right? You make promises, trust but verify, in-use verification. How are we going to check these things? And I didn't hear a firm answer on that. And to Range USA, what I heard tonight was you're going to provide the sheriff with video records of people going in and out of business. And that will be public record because it's not theirs, it's ours. You're going to provide, at request, a list of emails with serial numbers, gun serial numbers for people that bought guns at the store, because that's how you would verify that. I learned quite a bit about what the federal government tracks. I didn't know you had that good filter, right? Lead in the air is a big deal, so I appreciate hearing that, but that would be good information to have. And I think until the board figures out some of these disclosure issues, well, actually, I'd talk to Range USA. Until you know what you're getting into, you guys probably ought to back out of this. Because all that's public record. Like, there's no federal searchable database of guns, right? That's against the law. But you would be producing one here. And if I can get a hold of which, I live in Ann Arbor, we had to hire a FOIA officer on staff because people were asking for so much information, and it's so cheap these days to process all this stuff. So I think, Trustee Swanson, you're hitting it right on the head. There's a lot of, in my view, good faith efforts to try to make the business sound, but the township will entangle itself with these disclosure issues, and it doesn't sound like you figured it out yet. Recommend delay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm a Washtenaw resident, and I just want to say something. Transparency would have been nice, and a due diligence of investigation before, as the young lady said, this came to be, so that the argument couldn't be that there was capriciousness. The gentleman talked about suicide, and a few people talked about this young lady, this woman right here. You talked about death in your family. Well, at 12 years old, I got to see a man's entire intestine on the ground. Guns, shotguns, brains, everything. And I shared those things with my children for hope that it would shake and stir something in them not to want to touch a weapon or to hang out with kids that would convince them that they want to join a gang and go randomly find someone to shoot to prove their loyalty. To sit here and pretend that we couldn't look up insurance payoffs for deaths for people that happened before they got to buy this land and lock themselves in is sad. Right now, we got a real serious problem with a lot of people, an influx of guns coming in from all over the place. And then other people that are afraid. They're afraid to get out of their cars. Key fobs can be copied. So like he said, all somebody got to do is get a copy of your key fob, go in your car. They ain't got to jack you. Get your gun and go on about their business. And then next thing you know, there's a murder, there's a shootout, there's a robbery. And robberies are going on rapidly right now because people are getting desperate because of this war that's going on and the high cost of everything. So the people that don't have jobs or can't eat or won't go get a job, they're finding easy prey, us. So when they come, and I wanted to say something about these doors and the other things. I went to a bank in Detroit, and they had one door you come through, and it locked behind you. And the door in front of you locked in front of you. And you weren't getting in until somebody inside of that bank opened that door. That would have been a nice feature to require that they have if this was going to be going forth. So maybe that's a suggestion, I don't know. But for my kid to go to school and write that story, and they print a little book up, and he thought, Mom, the teachers were like shocked that that's the kind of thing you saw as a kid. So imagine what the kids here in Ypsi are seeing now. There have been quite a few deaths here these last few weeks. And one young man got shot over in Ann Arbor over a pair of gym shoes. Because somebody came to town, thought, I want to do something nice for the community. And they got him along the path. That's Ann Arbor. That's not even Ypsi. So just, for formality's sake and transparency's sake, since they weren't that transparent, if anything, I would have been digging the earth up, trying to find out everything I could have before I got tricked into that. And let's hope that nobody takes a Dodge Ram 150 and rams through this building, because that's not enough. And the next thing you know, we're all on guard, and we all can't go to work, and we all can't do something for the community. But the funeral homes will be making a lot of money. So get your insurance policies ready. Y'all have a good night.
Jason, did you want to interject something?
Well, once the public comment's over, I'd like to be able to come back around at least on the project before it goes back to you folks.
I know that you believe that you have no choice, but you do have a choice. These people were not honest with you. They were not honest with this community. And when Mr. Winters talks about due diligence, where was your due diligence? A community member had to find this out. That concerns me. Now, I have not been to a township board meeting. I've communicated with Mrs. Stumbo, and I have voted for many of you, but I'm disappointed that you didn't do your due diligence. That was your job. Enforcing laws, agreements, whatever, okay. But your job is also to inform us and to protect us and to do your due diligence. And that a community member had to find this out and share it with you is of grave concern to me. That's not about them, that's about you. You are patting yourselves on the back over this development agreement, which, looks great. You claim it. This gentleman in the front also claimed it, saying that that's what they do anyway. So I'm not sure where it came from. But, this is better than if it didn't exist. I understand that. But they lied to you. And I think you need to dig a little deeper to find out what else you might be missing before you agree to this. Because your obligation ultimately is to us. You feel that you are limited and that you don't have a choice, but you do. And I would say this to you too, and I actually would say this to the company, the gun company, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name. When Costco wanted to build in Saline, I don't know if you guys remember that, the community came out and they said, we do not want Costco here, because they knew what it would do to their local grocery stores. Costco said, okay, we don't want to be in a community that doesn't want us. So I would say to this company, do you want to be in a community that doesn't want you? Do you want to win because these people have their backs against the wall? I hope not. Be like Costco.
Thank you.
Alicia Dyer, so I was one of the people that have created the policy brief, and I would love to talk about the alleged inaccuracies in it, because the incidents on that policy brief are all from multiple news articles. Also, I did not list them all. There's even more. I only put those ones on there just for sake of making a point that we were lied to. So that's one thing. The other thing I'll say is I do believe that we have a choice to say no tonight. The company developers were dishonest. We, as a public, were denied an opportunity to actually have factual information. If a developer comes in here and just lies blatantly, then we should have the right to say no. The other thing is we had no problem banning recreational marijuana stores when it got to this point in the process, so why can't we say no to this? I mean, I think Ypsi City, I heard there was an ordinance banning firearm stores. Maybe we can look at using an ordinance. I think there's ways out of this, and I think that we wiggle out of lawsuits and creatively do things all the time in this township, and so I ask that we do that this time as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Sadly, I'm back because we're still talking about the same subject matter. After hearing the people, now, I don't want to have to go and belabor and repeat myself, but you all do have a choice. No matter what this ordinance says, when I go to the Township Zoning Act, and this is Michigan.gov, it indicates the zoning ordinance shall be based upon a plan designed to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. That in and of itself speaks to the choice that you have, because it is rooted and grounded in the very ordinance that you all are putting forth. Now, as we talk about the ordinance, we hear the B3. We hear that there's another addendum or extra part to this that put this agreement in play. My question is who really put this agreement in play? Because on one hand, we hear, right, from the development, the gentleman at the podium there, that this is something that you all developed together with this entity. Then we hear that, no, this is something that's done for all. Then it goes back to no, right? So which way is it? The lies is what you are potentially going to base a vote for our community on. That should be concerning to every single one of you sitting there. The fact that they did not disclose truth and that they refrained from sharing incidents of harm. We're talking about guns still. I think they said guns are still out on the streets. Do we not think that the same thing can occur here? We heard my brother over here. I work in this county. I deal with the trauma that's happening here every single day. We cannot ignore that it will come to your doorstep one day. Your doorstep one day. It's not only just going to hit, right? We're talking about, right, where the zoning is and it's directly, right, access to the highway. What's on the opposite side of the highway? That's right. It's not just the township that's going to be affected. That's right. It's going to be the city and the outlying areas of the township. When a person wants to go and do harm, they don't look for an address in particular. They look for one that looks like easy access and easy prey. And every one of you and every one of us sitting in this place would be easy access prey. I don't care if you do have a gun on your hip, because they've already planned it long before you decided to think about what is going to come out. Our sheriff's department, our Ypsi Loco, our Pittsfield Township, all of them are looking at officers that are tired. They don't have the wherewithal sometimes to want to have to go out and chase after. This is why we still have guns at bay. Do we not think that this is not going to hit our city, our township? It will. And so when we look at this act and it says promote, I love language. Your ordinance should be furthering the wellness and the safety of the people. And so I, again, urge you, because you do not have to, and I have to say this, and I'm going to go take my seat. The question that was asked is, where are we in this process? And then I hear from the attorney the continuation of, right, what we cannot do. We are at this point that we cannot move forward. No, you can. So to listen to your counsel lead you in the direction of no choice, that's not okay either. You have a choice, and I pray that you keep the people, your families, and yourself in mind as you vote this evening. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pat Lennon. I'm an attorney with the Honigman firm. I'm the chair of our Land Use and Development Group. And I have to say, that's a tough speech to follow. Very passionate and very powerful. And I have to say, we recognize that there are very strong feelings about guns and gun violence. We have them too. And I hope you've heard that come through from the spokespeople from our group. I'm sorry, I'll be quick, I promise. Most lawyers aren't, but I try to be good at that. I'll be boring, but quick. And that's why you've heard that our client has not only complied with the ordinance, but they've done things that go above and beyond it. And as you've heard from your own attorney, the ordinance is very clear. And our client has complied with it every single step of the way. So at this point, their application complies with the law. So in our view, they're entitled to an approval under the law. Now, if you were to deny them because of their use, well, then that would be, in our view, a violation of your own law. So we hope tonight you'll consider those factors and consider the extra measures our client is willing to take to develop this project here and the efforts they want to make to be a good neighbor and a good part of this community. Thank you all for your time, your opinions, and your input. We look forward to answering any further questions and hope you'll view our application favorably. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Derek Jackson. I'm a longtime township resident. I know I work at the sheriff's office, but I just want to speak not on behalf of my role as the director of the sheriff's office, but just as a resident. And I think what I've heard a lot tonight is the issue that I said to Lieutenant, I can't be quiet on this issue because when I leave here to get in my car, I always talk about this book that I have that is full of dead kids' names since I started this job. So I think what we're hearing is a lot of the trauma around gun violence. And I'm not speaking on the range at all. I'll speak to that in a minute. I just want to recenter us because other folks have spoke to all the range and the issues and stuff like that. So I want to bring a different perspective. And I hope, regardless of the decisions you all make, that this experience will lead us to maybe take some actions that we probably needed to take years ago just on gun stuff, not on the range issues, right? And so I'm sitting over here getting emotional because I'm thinking the fact that we're having this conversation and we haven't found a way to build a youth community center is tragic. And again, I know the issues because I work in this space, so I'm not even trying to place blame on anyone. What I'm saying, though, is hopefully from this conversation, we can all realize how important the gun violence issue is, and there are some real tangible things that we can do. That's really my point. Just on Range USA, if it happens, which looks like that's legally what's going to happen, I will say that there are opportunities for a really educationally conscious organization who is coming into our community to make some commitments that maybe we could also add into this. So the idea, the notion that maybe committing to helping educate and support those who are most impacted by gun violence, the company doing that here, and I want to be specific, we're talking about black and brown boys in Ypsi who are really impacted. So maybe the potential for the company to chime in and say they would be a part of that. Maybe there's the potential to agree to be a part of some of the Violence Commission work that's being done by the community and thinking about signing up to actually carry forward, fund, and resource some of those. When I hear 50 million rounds, I hear a lot of money. So again, I will, as an officer, probably use that range, make sure it's safe if it's there. I will make sure that some of the kids that I work with learn how to use a weapon, because just as it is appropriate for a kid in Manchester to learn how to shoot for safety, it is just as appropriate for a kid in Ypsi to learn how to shoot for safety. And anyone who says it isn't, think about the racism that is tied to that. So I just want to offer that I think there are some tangible things we can do for a good resident or a good business owner to come in here that really could help around the gun violence issue we have in Ypsilanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Jason?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, if there were any other questions that you folks might have, because I know that it was, if there's any questions of the planning department. And then just so that the public's aware, it's my office, me as the planning director, that has the authority to vet these projects as they come in, not individual trustees. We provide you with the information as our office, collects the information from applicants. So I don't want the public to feel that, something slipped past us. Our department vets all developers that come into the township as far as their business operations, what their past history is, and any of those incidents that they might have had in the past were aware to us, as a part of researching their company through the internet like we do any other company that comes to town to see what their track record and their background is. And as far as firearms retailers go, they appear to be one of the ones right at the top of the list as far as being responsible and all those other types of things. So when our department goes through and asks them to provide us with information, which they've always given us everything we've asked them for, they've been forthcoming with everything that we've asked from them. I've not had any reservations as far as them being at least a responsible retail of legal firearms in this country. So when I provide you with that information, I want you to always have a comfort level that our office looks at it on your behalf before you get it. And I understand it's your responsibility as elected officials to also look at and make decisions on these things, but I want the public to know that it's our office that all of these things get filtered through first, and we provide it to you when it's deemed ready and necessary. So a lot of the responsibility to make sure that these types of issues come to light are my responsibility. So if anybody has any questions, about that process, I'm happy to answer them. Not right at this moment, but certainly after this meeting or first thing tomorrow morning. So.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Are there any other questions about the motion? We have.
I'm going to make this motion because it seems like other people want to talk. I know they will too. Madam Chair, I call for the question.
Well, motion is on.
Yes, I call for the question. I need a second. Please, to call for the question. Our discussion has ended and proceed on the vote.
Is there a second on the call for the question? Support. The motion support to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. It's now properly before the board. A motion would be in order for the request to approve the Stage 2 final site plan, detailed engineering, and development agreement for Range USA located at 660 James L. Hart Parkway.
I would so move the motion before the board.
Motion, Gerald Rowe, to approve the final site plan and the development agreement. Is there a support?
Support.
There's a motion and support. I do, we've heard a lot of trauma, like you said. Oh, I'm sorry. There was an idea that came up about working with the community.
Yeah.
And working, like Derek Jackson suggested to do, and I would just like to say that was a good suggestion, and I think we should look at that. I'd also want to say I looked up the City of Ypsilanti ordinance, and it has to do with home occupations, and that's something we can also look at, because there's a lot of firearm sales from homes, and we should look at that, and so that was another good suggestion to not allow that to happen. I'm not sure if you can, but that was a suggestion that was made, and I think we should look into it. So you're right, we have a motion and support, and the
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I just also would like to then acknowledge, Derek, you did acknowledge the trauma in our community, and I think that's very clear and apparent in this room. And I would also just like to say that you all sitting in the audience are not the only ones who have also experienced trauma and gun violence in their own families. I am also married to a high school teacher who gets, gun threats every single day at his school. Last year, one of his students committed suicide. So I just want to be clear that this board who's sitting here is a part of this community, and we do understand the trauma in this room. And Derek, I can feel it too. So you can smirk and laugh all you want about it, but it's true and it's real. And I would love also for a community center to be here. So if we could call upon our Washtenaw County, who is committed to do that since 2008 and still we're waiting upon that, we welcome those discussions again. So thank you.
We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion carries. Number 2 is a request to authorize circuit court litigation to abate a public nuisance located at 6050 South Ivanhoe. Budget and line item 101-729-801-023.
So move.
Support Peterson. The motion by Gerald Rose, supported by Peterson to approve it. Are there questions or comments regarding it? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3 is a request to approve the master agreement for municipal street lighting with DTE.
Support.
I do want to state that the Cobra was not located in the development agreement, so we just want to make sure that's the type of streets.
Can we come to order? If they want to go out, they need to go out.
Where's it at?
Yeah.
Can you please let us continue with the meeting? Thank you.
Want to go out, go out.
None of this is important.
Not fair.
Just the other piece.
And it's the same lighting that's on US 12. It goes down Huron Street, and it's staggered street lighting for the bike path that's going to go on Huron Street, which is a long awaited. Are there questions or comments? I don't have it. Where's it? Can you please take it out? Can you please take it outside so we can complete our business here? Thank you so much. I appreciate
Nobody
it.
was smirking and laughing because it's no
Annette?
smirking
Out of order,
business.
honey.
It's no laughing
Out of
matter.
order.
It's no laughing matter. So if you want to try to call somebody out, make sure you're doing it right.
May I ask you to? No, it's okay.
Wait, Ms. Kaiser, please.
Come on, call order.
We have a motion and support to approve the agreement for municipal street lighting on Huron Street. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 4 is a budget amendment. Number 6, Clerk Rowe.
Sorry, I had to get to it. I have a request to increase the budget amendment for DTE to install 24 streetlights on Huron Street that we will make sure are Cobra lights. The total DTE agreement is for, hold on. I'd move to increase the bike, sidewalk, rec, and roads fund budget by $48,966 to $2,624,240 and improve the department line items changes as outlined. I would so move the budget amendment.
There's a motion. Is there support? Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 1 is request to seek sealed bids for the replacement of the roof at the fire station. Number 4, located at 8879 Textile Road, and that will come back to the township for approval.
So move, Peterson.
Motion Peterson, supported Eldridge. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chief, don't leave yet. There might be questions. Motion carries. Number 2 is a request to seek the sealed bids for asphalt replacement for the parking lot at Fire Station Number 3, which is located at 20 South Hewitt.
So move, Peterson.
Support.
Motion Peterson, support Rowe to approve it. This is Was authorized last year. We have to reauthorize it again. Due to COVID, it did not proceed forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3 is a request to seek bids for 2 fire pump engines.
So move.
Motion Giroux, support Eldridge to approve the request to seek sealed bid for the 2 fire pump engine. Questions or comments? This was discussed at length in the work session, and Chief, we want to get this out quickly, and if we have to call a special meeting, we will do that in order to accommodate.
Yeah, I think when I talked to Fred and those out in the hallway, we're going to put together the bid packet that you requested.
Okay.
Heather requested per the financial policy, and we'll be visiting you as soon as we can. We get it before you.
And Chief, if it's helpful for us to like sit down, just like I'm almost all open tomorrow, so except for 9 and 2.
Yeah, they what was it called? Sourcewell, off the governmental procurement site. Mm-hmm. And that's what,
just call me in the morning, Chief.
Yeah, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question behind that? So
Of course.
That be before May? Sometime in May, you're going to try to get it out and have a special meeting or not?
Yeah.
That is the plan, yes.
Okay, well, I just apologize, I want to know I'm in support, but I'll be on vacation.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I don't know if people are interested in it. We do have the, a millage for this. There's one budgeted in the 2022 budget. There's another fund balance that can pay for this, and it's a special millage for capital purchases just like this. So it's a large purchase. It'll come back to the board for approval, but there's funding for it. So that's good news. We have a motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other business before the board?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an ARPA committee update that we're.
Board member updates?
Our ARPA committee is currently reviewing the language for our webpage so that residents are able to provide feedback. We're also working on creating a survey for further community engagement. And next time, possibly bringing back a couple recommendations around the road agreement, the second road agreement from Washington County, and possibly Health and New Human Services from the Washington County and Ann Arbor partnership as well. That is all.
Any other update?
I'd like to make a comment on the ARPA committee. So it's unfortunate. People aren't here to hear this. But I will personally take some responsibility in the delay in the spending of the money. We're really trying to make sure, it sounds like a lot of money, that we make decisions that are going to best meet our residents' needs. And specifically, we're deeply concerned about the opportunity index in more than reports and words. So in my learning, in my day job, things are the way they are often because of institutional and systemic problems. And often if you're quick to spend money, the money gets spent in the same systems and the same institutions that have given you the results you have. So we are taking the role of those dollars very seriously. There is no plan to hold that money in a way that wouldn't best serve our residents. So I just want people to know that. That is not, it's not why we're delaying it. There's a lot of money that's being spent in lots of arenas, and we're just trying to make sure we get, like we talk about the fire trucks, like in any other situation, we're trying to make sure that we spend the money in ways that are gonna help people. And so it does bother me that the act is that we're delaying and we're withholding something from people because what we have spent money on so far, we took right straight to the residents when other entities that are responsible for the residents wouldn't help us. We were begging for masks. We were begging for people to go with us door to door and take them into neighborhoods to people where people were grateful. And so it is, whatever, we got thick skin, we can take it, but the idea that we don't care about people and that we're holding that money and not getting in the hands of where it should go is problematic to me. The other thing I would say is from my role as someone who works in school districts, we have facilities that our residents are paying for right now that could be open long hours without us having to waste time building them. And so one of my biggest frustrations is the idea that we're all supposed to work together. Solving the problems you talk about and the trauma we talk about, I live it every day. I'm no different than anybody else who's working in that environment, but we have facilities and buildings right now that people are paying for. The idea that we're waiting for someone to come and build something for us, that would be fabulous, but why not use the buildings that we have right now that residents are paying dearly for, especially in the previous Willow Run School District? I wish there was this energy around pressing what's happening there. So, and that's my own personal opinion where I live it every day, but we can do that. And Derek, you sat on committees with me about how those buildings were going to be used and what was going to happen and the promises that were made in the community. If you go back and look at the report that was created and the time that was spent, we're not following the things that we said we were going to follow. And then it begs the question, if we followed those things, where would we be now? And would children be safer? Because the plan was to have facilities used and to locate them in specific places where there's athletic fields and there's gyms and there's other things. So I am frustrated by that, and I don't think we have to wait for something to be built to figure out a way for the community to wrap itself around everybody, not just youth, and make sure that the facilities that we're already currently paying for serve the useful purpose for our community.
Thank you. I was going to give a couple updates if I could. And I know it's a long meeting, but we let everyone be heard. And I think that's important that people, not everyone around the table agrees, but I've been elected for a long time, and I think that people have, to allow people the right to express themselves is important. So I apologize if you're not used to that on other boards and commissions, but that's how we've operated here for decades.
We all agree.
I do want to say that we had a meeting with the real estate, the mayor of Ypsilanti, and I had a meeting with the real estate board of realtors, and it was a Zoom meeting. And one of the issues that we brought up is when people buy property, they're not aware of how much their taxes are. And they don't really have to disclose that, but when they get their bill, they're surprised. So that was one thing that we asked for. They asked us several questions. YMCA was one of them. People, the county has a responsibility to put a rec center over on the east side. They promised to do it in 2013, and they didn't do it. They tried to put it in the city of Ypsilanti. We tried to work with the YMCA in order to give them, and the property was about $5 million, but it's with the understanding that the county would be the safety net. The county does not want to operate a rec center on the east side. They don't want to do it. And I have a meeting on Thursday again to talk about it. The county applied for a $5 million grant. The facility being proposed was $20 million. That did not include the operations of the facility. So we do have an obligation to our taxpayers to make sure that we're financially stable. And I think there is room for the county to operate a rec center here or take it to the neighborhood like Debbie talked about. Sometimes things happen for a reason. I have great faith. If they would have started building that, it'd probably be $35 million. Well, I think the still might be in the ocean, if they had approval to do it. YMCA never did a feasibility study. They had 3 years to do it. They didn't do it. The feasibility study is what they do for their regional facilities. That's the financial projection to make sure that it was feasible under their model. And they sell memberships. They closed 4 YMCAs in the state of Michigan. Now, they closed several throughout the United States, but they wouldn't give us that information because they don't have to. They're a nonprofit and a private entity, so they don't have to disclose the things that we're used to as public entities. And we have learned these things. I think YMCA operates a very good early childhood education, and I understand they do a good job downtown Ann Arbor, but we have to make sure that whatever we do is in the right place for the right reasons to help with the recreation and the health of our community, and I support doing that. Met with Underground Printing, 160 jobs is moving here. They're moving from Scioto. They bought a building at Bozel. They want to be part of the community too, and it's just nice to hear that spirit coming from, you know, a very successful business. They do want to partake in community events and see what they can do, and they have more land there, and they've offered to try to do more other than just operating a business here. So that was a very, very good meeting. Met with U of M and the Center for Health and Research. So we have an opportunity index, and we do take it seriously, and we bring it up in every meeting. We're the 8th most economically segregated county in the United States of America. We need to change that. We need to lift people up. They need to be healthier. They need to be, education level needs to be increased in order to make us a healthy community long-term. And U of M reached out to me over there. This is a totally different department, but they wanted to have us another Zoom meeting on that. The University Musical Society at U of M. I just had a meeting 2 days ago. They want to bring their events here to the Ypsilanti area. So that's a positive, encouraging sign. And they want to do it different. They want to do it in neighborhood parks. They want to do it in schools. They don't want to have the big, you know, symphonies or whatever events they have. They really want to take the arts and culture to the community, in the community. We also had a Willow Run area discussion. Greg Dill was there, as well as Wayne County Executive, about all the improvements in the jobs they're bringing, which is off of Rawsonville Road, and how we can work together to get our people the jobs and the training there. And that's another positive thing that's happening in order to help uplift our community and get people the employment which is necessary in order to, because of the auto industry. John E. Lawrence Jazz Series is coming to Ypsi Township. It's starting July 1st. It'll be on every Friday from July 1st to September. That's huge. And Mike, I know you and Robin and everyone's working to bring that jazz series concert here. So that's exciting. Trustee Newman and Trustee Swanson and I met with AAATA for 3 hours on Good Friday. We were closed, but we scheduled a meeting and we met. I don't understand why people are not talking about that rate increase on the taxes at 2.45 mils. Going from 0.7, it's a 350% increase in taxes. It's almost equal to what we pay for garbage, recycling, and yard waste. That is a huge tax. It's voted on in Ann Arbor, Ypsi City, and Ypsi Township. And there has not been enough community engagement on that and discussion. No one clearly knows the benefits. I was trying to, in case someone asked a question, I was trying to go through their booklet to put together their routes. And that's not our responsibility, that's their responsibility. They want to have more frequency and they want to pay back the deficit that they weren't running their company in a very good manner. And Jimmy, you brought that up at the last meeting, and you're absolutely correct. We had that meeting, we asked a lot of questions on that. So 0.7 mils is a renewal, 0.6 mils is to pay for their deficit. So that's, they're going to vote on that Thursday at the AAATA. We have 2 members out of 10. So that the probability of that moving forward is very high if people don't express how they feel about that. So, and the city of Ypsilanti has one, Ypsi Township has one, so it's a 10-member board. But that's very, very important. And I just wanted to update the board on those meetings.
Motion to adjourn? Oh, go ahead. I rescind my motion.
For Stanny, will.
Well, I was going to add, because I did not put it I did not include it in my attorney report because of the meeting that was going to be lengthy tonight. But I just want to follow up on what Debbie has said, because like she said, everybody's gone here now. But I've said it before. I'm a product of the Will Run Village, with the Will Run K through 12, spent my entire life. And Debbie spent her adult life teaching school. And the frustrating part about what she's saying is that for years, we have been banging heads with the Ypsilanti Community Schools over how they're going to repurpose the former school buildings. When I was growing up, every one of these schools during the summertime were open to the neighborhoods for the kids to play year-round. And the point Debbie's making, I believe, is that sometimes you don't have to build a new facility and figure out how to bring people to that when you have existing facilities in your backyard. And some of this may actually end up in litigation anyways. We watched the Ypsi schools tear down Thurston School when we asked them to keep that school for that community. They sold Kettering School when we asked them not to do that, or Kaiser. They tore down one, kept the other one to the school. They sold Artist School to another, to a church at the time, and had all the facilities there that you could possibly have for recreation, a kitchen, auditorium, everything. They have the $1 million facilities in the former high school with a track and a field over there, not being utilized. Instead, they lease it out to Play at the Cage, which is basically a for-profit organization that we're still banging heads with both the community schools and that private entity over how they could be there and not be in compliance with the township. So the point I'm making right now real quickly is that what Debbie has said is what is true. And for years, we've continued to fight that same fight of trying to get this pristine facility that's not going to come here unless the county does it. They're not going to do it. They've already said they're not going to do it. And then by the meantime, you got facilities scattered all around this township, underutilized, not being repurposed, and are right in the back door of some of the most areas that need that type of activity the most. When I was a child going in the Will Run Village, the old Foster School, which is now the township's community center, was open every day during the summer for all the kids to go there and do arts and crafts, basketball, etc. And that was something because it was a community resource that was being used. You now have swimming pools not being utilized. You got baseball fields not being utilized, track facilities, indoor gymnasiums, but yet everybody wants something brand new when the only party that can do it is not willing to basically put their marker down and then do it. So I just kind of wanted to say that because Debbie hit the nail on the head again, and we've been dealing with this issue for probably 15 years or 20 years with the Ypsilanti Community Schools in regards to how they're going to repurpose those buildings for the community that paid for those buildings, and they won't do it.
Madam Chair, I just had a board member update from the clerk's office.
Yes.
First, I would just like to deeply thank my staff who worked so hard on verifying those petitions with me, and as well as Treasurer Eldridge's staff for helping with that. And also thank you, Lisa, for doing the minutes for this meeting. And we are 2 weeks away from our YCS election. The clerk's office will be open April 30th from 8 to 4 as well to allow for other people to vote. Our public accuracy test is a week from today at 10 a.m. here at the Civic Center if anyone is interested in watching. Thank you. Support.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned, 10:10. Yes.
Debbie, I'm right behind you for a second. Sorry. Okay. No, go ahead. No, go ahead. You sure? Okay, thank you.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.